Story 1. Wife cheated on me with her ex. I humiliated her in front of her family and served her divorce papers. I never expected that I would witness something like this in my own life, which I was used to hearing from different people or maybe on social media. But going through something like that in reality can shatter your world. I'm a simple man and work as a professor at a university. I have been married to my wife, Lilac, for 10 years. We have 2 sons. I met her at a party where my aunt suggested to my mother that I should ask Lilac out for a date. I was never interested in dating, so I never really dated, as I was always preoccupied with my PhD and my education. But after seeing Lilac, I was mesmerized by her beauty, and just like her name, she looked soft as a flower. My parents were nagging at me for a long time to get married, so I asked Lilac out. Our parents had already interacted with each other at the party, and they dearly wanted both of us to get married. The first date was amazing. She was fun to be around, and she was doing dental at that time. We ended up dating for a year and we got married. Now it's been 10 years. Our daily lives were pretty much normal. She was a great mother and wife. I never felt any problem in my life after her arrival, and she took great care of me. But that was only the start, and I never knew that curiosity would take me to an unexpected turn. After 10 years, knowing about her past would have helped me detangle the knots that I never really tried to know. Things were going smoothly, and never in 10 years of marriage had I doubted her until 1 month ago. And on a random day, things turned very rough for both of us. Maybe it was me who was creating assumptions in my head, or maybe she was hiding something because I never had any sort of negative view of her before. It was one evening when she came back from her clinic at a very usual time. I tried calling her, but she didn't respond to my calls. At first, I thought maybe she had a lot of patients today, so I called the receptionist at her clinic. She told me that Lilac didn't come to the clinic that day, which made me curious and tense. I was very anxious, thinking about what might have happened. Couldn't sleep at all. It was past midnight when she came inside looking really tired. I was going to ask her why she took a leave today. Before I could even say a word, she walked past me and said she had lots of patients today and she wanted to sleep. After hearing her lie to my face, and meanwhile knowing the truth, I just sat there on the couch, anxiously thinking about what could be the reason behind her lie. And that was something new. I was irritated and annoyed by this, but then I decided to try to sleep because it was already late, and I had work tomorrow. I went inside the room and saw her wearing her office clothes with her legs hanging from the bed. I took her in my arms and laid her properly. What could have been worse than realizing your wife, who never touched alcohol in 10 years of marriage, reeked badly of alcohol? I covered her with a blanket and looked at her face. She was sleeping peacefully and unbothered. I wanted to avoid any kind of conversation in the morning, so I left for work early in the morning. I couldn't sleep at all because I kept thinking about it. I had to prepare question papers for my student's upcoming exam, so I thought waking her up in the morning would be a bad idea, as it would lead to stress and arguments for both of us. I came back from work and saw her car in the parking lot. While petting my cat on the front porch, I saw Lilac through the window. She was texting someone, smiling and blushing. As soon as I went inside, she immediately put her phone aside and started helping our elder son, James, with his homework. She always hugged me and kissed me, and this time her smile faded after looking at me. She greeted me with a rough hello, which sounded uninteresting. It was very awkward to face such an unusual thing in just one day. Later in the evening, I asked her to bring me a warm cup of coffee. She had the cup of coffee in one hand and was texting someone with another, smiling. I looked over at her once and then looked away, but my second look saved our younger son, Max, from getting burned with the coffee on his head, all while her mother was busy texting someone, God knows who. I shouted at Lilac for the first time in our 10 years of marriage for her carelessness. She kept apologizing, so I told her that I wanted to talk to her about a few things. I let the boys play video games for a while so we could have a proper conversation. Instead of asking where she was last night, knowing this might give her a hint, I asked her where her attention was and to whom she was talking on the phone. She looked at me apologetically, and as she was going to say something, her phone started buzzing. It happened 3 times, which made me very annoyed, and she apologized. She told me that she met an old friend the day before yesterday, and last night they both decided to catch up, so that's the reason behind her being late. She still didn't tell me that she was not in her clinic or about the alcohol thing. Agree over this or not, but hiding information does count as minor cheating. What is bothering me is that it is almost midnight now, and I still see she's up online and chit-chatting on her phone. Update 1. It's been a month since the last update. As I have already mentioned before, I was preparing questions for my student's exam, so I was so busy with my schedule that I failed to make an update on the same night. Seeing her having a conversation with someone at 4 a.m. in the morning wasn't unusual, but the conversation that I overheard made me realize otherwise. I would like to quote it for you all to read. Nah, it wasn't a dream marriage of mine. He's boring and outdated, and I'm tired of the vanilla sex every time. God, I need spice in my life. Oh, you want to? Probably the response to her wanting spice in her marriage was I really an outdated, boring person? Did I really fail as a husband? I thought she was happy with me. Did the arrival of a new friend change everything? Who is even the new friend of hers? She always slept in my arms, sometimes bought me flowers, and treated me so well. I can't believe hearing all of that. I went back to my side of the bed. I heard her footsteps, and the door opened. She came back, got inside the blanket, hugged my back like nothing happened, and fell into a deep slumber. As for me, my instinct was clearer than water, and at the back of my head, I knew she was drifting away from me. Honestly, after that night, I got suspicious of her and started following her. Everything went downhill, and it was worse than what I expected. If a person is capable of minor cheating, then eventually they have something under their sleeves. I couldn't sleep at all, and my head was pounding pretty badly. After having breakfast, I told her that I could drop her off at the clinic. She didn't respond at first, and then she told me that she was going to meet James's teacher at the parents' meeting. It was amusing. Doesn't she know that the meeting was yesterday and I already attended that? But I kept track of the lies she was feeding me. I didn't say a word and left for work. On my way to the office, I got a call from her clinic. The receptionist asked me why Lilac hadn't come to the clinic for 3 to 4 days. She was not even responding to the calls and texts properly. The patients had taken prior appointments, and when the doctor didn't turn up, they were very frustrated because they had their appointments on the respective days. One thing was leading me to another, and my doubts were getting clearer day by day. Instead of being a puppet, I decided to see it through my own eyes. I immediately completed my work and let my intern do the rest of it. I left my office and went to her clinic, knowing she wouldn't be there. I entered the clinic and called her. She didn't pick up my call but called me back after 2 minutes. I told her that I visited her, but she was not there. She couldn't say anything for a few seconds and then responded hesitantly that she was visiting an old patient who couldn't come to the office and had to describe the process of RCT. She was lying because when I asked the receptionist if there was any home visit appointment, she said no. I went back home, and both of my sons were silently studying. Our nanny takes care of James and Max. She was an old friend of my mother and was the most trusted person. I cooked dinner for them and finished assembling the paper so I could ask for a few days of leave and follow my wife. Things went as planned, and I decided to remain silent until I gathered all the proof so I could properly defend my doubts. At the dinner table, I asked James about the meeting, and he asked me a question in return, asking what meeting I was talking about, as we had already attended the parents' meeting. The look on Lilac's face was satisfying. She took a bite and said that she just wanted to talk to James's teacher about his progress. I put my spoon aside and looked at her. She asked me what was wrong. I took a sigh and asked if she saw the progress report I sent her over the phone. She apologized and told me that she had forgotten. I asked her how she could forget something so important while being on the phone all day. She irritably asked whether I was trying to say that she does nothing except be on the phone all day. I told her no, and she was taking it the wrong way. She stood up and was very angry with my statement and shouted at me, saying that I was being baseless and that it was me who never tried doing anything for the family. Her statement made me furious, but instead of blabbering everything out, I let her speak. I asked her what she meant by this, and there she said again that I was a boring person and our marriage lost its spark. I laughed and told her, Thank you for taking the conversation the other way around to use it as a shield for her thoughts and feelings. And I continued eating my food. She left again at the same time. She was on call, laughing and talking, but I didn't want to hear the conversation. I wanted to see it by myself and collect the evidence. I never checked her phone, and with such behavior, I knew she had a password. I waited till she finally fell asleep and took her phone. She did have the password. I tried many things, but it didn't open. There was one thing about her forgetful personality. She used to write passwords in her notebook. I took out the notebook, and there it was. The phone finally opened, and my hands were shivering from opening the text messages. But I had to. And there it was, the truth. I just sat there on the floor with the phone in my hand, scrolling down and seeing the sexting, nudes, and "I love you." She was sent to this guy named Richard. That night I cried. I don't remember the last time I cried like this. I put my hand on my mouth to suppress my weeping, and I took a deep breath because I had less time and I needed proof. I immediately took screenshots of their chats and sent them to my phone. Before putting the phone aside, I had to delete the screenshots from the gallery, and thankfully I checked the gallery and there were pictures of them. I sent those pictures to my phone and cleared up every piece of evidence that could let her know that I checked her phone. In the morning, I left for work as usual, but in reality, I went to my friend Elijah's place. We have been friends since childhood, and he knew everything about my life. I told him everything that happened, and he couldn't believe it either. He kept saying that if I hadn't shown him the proof, he would have smacked me for a joke like this. After a while, I headed towards the address of Richard, which was mentioned in one of the texts, and parked my car behind the tree. It was not my car but a Mercedes, as Lilac would know in seconds. After waiting, I saw Richard outside his house with flowers in his hand, and Lilac got out of her car and hugged him tightly. I immediately took the picture and couldn't look at them for more than a few seconds. I kept wondering that if she didn't like me, a little bit of honesty could have been better and would have fixed everything. But neither did she want to lose this family, nor could she stop cheating. As much as I was heartbroken, she destroyed my ego because in a world full of cheaters, I was so proud of myself and her for being a stable and loyal couple. She made a joke out of my calm nature. This went on for 3 to 4 days, and I collected satisfactory evidence because it was my time to pour oil into the burning fire and ruin the already ruined marriage properly. I already told everything to our nanny, and she offered to let me know when my wife came back and left the place. Our nanny called me and informed me that she was going to visit her sick relatives, so she wouldn't be there today, and I gave her the leave. I called Lilac, told her the same, and asked her to go back home so she could leave, as James and Max would be left alone. She agreed immediately. I was with Elijah, telling him and discussing what we should do about this matter. I didn't have the courage to tell these things to our parents. Suddenly, I got a call from Lilac where she was sobbing and saying that Max fell from the ladder and broke his arm, and she was taking him to the ER. My skin turned cold, and anxiety took hold of me, and I panicked, not knowing what I should do now. I didn't have the proper state of mind to drive the car, so I asked Elijah instead. When we reached the hospital, the doctor told us not to worry, as it was just a minor injury, and it would heal in a few weeks. I took a sigh of relief and kissed my son's forehead. While Lilac was talking to my mother on the phone, I was sitting next to James and asked him about the incident and how it happened. He told me that Max was climbing the ladder, and he shouted and called Mom many times, but she didn't listen as she was on the call, and then Max slipped and fell. After hearing this, I got so angry. I walked towards her and threw her phone on the floor. Everyone was looking at us. I screamed and shouted at her for being so irresponsible. Elijah was trying to calm me down, but I couldn't. Max could have gotten a serious injury. I said many things, and she was trying to make herself the victim by saying that I was an absent father. After hearing this, I got closer to her and whispered in her ear that at least I was better than her and didn't have anyone on her back. She looked frightened like a scared cat. After that argument in the hospital, Elijah took our sons to his place, and I went back home with Lilac. We didn't say a thing on our way back. And as for remorse, she was just pretending, as I saw her texting him a few times, and that made me even more furious. What she told me blew my mind. She must have been thinking that I would sympathize with her, but I don't have any sympathy for cheaters. She told me that she dated Richard back in her high school year, and that relationship ended a month before our marriage. She never wanted to marry me but had no choice. You see, Lilac's dad is also a dentist and had his own clinic which Lilac was eyeing, but her dad kept a condition that she had to marry someone respectable in order to inherit that, or else it would go to her brother, who was 5 years younger to her and was also interested in pursuing dental. Richard was jobless and a rookie at that time, so she broke up with Richard and decided to marry me. She said she met Richard 1 month ago in her clinic when he visited her to get his teeth cleaned for a photo shoot, as he works as a model for a fashion designing company. After meeting him again, things escalated slowly, which ended up in this. I had tears in my eyes, and she was already crying and asking me for another chance to fix this. But it was all a play by now. She knew it quite well that Richard wouldn't marry her, and she couldn't afford to lose a stable family. She also stated that I was not her type of person, and half of the time she felt confined. In response, I asked her whether she was blaming me for having a different personality, which made her cheat, and not her own actions. She stood up and started shouting at me for not being understanding, and that's why she preferred Richard over me. I walked towards her, grabbed her by her hands angrily, and told her to shut up with the bullshit and manipulation. I told her that cheating was her own choice and that she wanted to do it, not because of me. I was so angry at her claims, and I did everything I could. I left the place and asked Elijah to drop James and Max off at their grandparents', and I will be staying at his place for a while. I have not spoken to him after arriving at his place. I just don't want to talk to anyone. Maybe unleashing my emotions in front of strangers might help me calm down. I'm just able to think straight. Update 2. Hey people, I know I took a while to update. Thank you for checking on me. This is the last satisfactory update. Also, Max is all healed now, and I was working on my latest project, which basically means satisfying my ego. So I spent 3 days at Elijah's place and did my college work. I refused to talk about any of this with him, and I avoided every conversation related to this. After a while, I went back home, and much to my surprise, it was decorated with flowers and balloons. Then Lilac came with flowers and started apologizing and begging me for forgiveness. She had been texting me and calling me, and I avoided talking to her. I had no feelings for her except pure hatred, but for my revenge, I agreed to be manipulated by her one more time. Now her acts of being pretentious all the time were clear to me, and honestly, she never really took care of the kids. The nanny did. And as a mother, it's a responsibility and not a favor for your own kid. That's why the kids wanted me or the nanny more than her own mother. I was busy preparing for Max's birthday and other shits pulled by Lilac like couple therapy and other different things to rebuild this relationship. She was trying so hard to make it look genuine while meeting him on my back once a week. We decided to invite the close family members for his birthday, which included my parents and siblings, and the same for her. Before everything happened, birthdays used to be so fun, but now it feels disgusting to think that she was just pretending the whole time. After the cake cutting ceremony was the time to reveal the biggest gift to her father. I asked James and Max to go to the other room and open their presents while everyone was chilling out. I called Lilac and asked her whether she was going to give the present she prepared to her father. Her father looked happy, as did everybody else, but as for Lilac, she already had it. She kept nodding her head and saying no with her signs. Her eyes were teary as I handed over the gift to her father. He opened it and saw the pictures and everything. He stood up and shouted at her for meeting that jobless jerk again and for ruining our marriage. Another gift was for Lilac, divorce papers, which already came 10 days ago. Her brother and my family were in complete shock as I told her father everything. Her father asked her to sign the paper, leave the hospital tomorrow, and find work for herself somewhere else, as he couldn't let her ruin his name. Lilac was crying and asking her father for forgiveness, and her mother was devastated. She ruined this for everyone, and a small sense of remorse would let me stop it, but she continued meeting him afterward. I allowed her to meet James and Max on weekends and refused to let her take them for a stay after her irresponsible action. After the divorce, we went on our separate paths and never indulged in any conversation with her, even after seeing her for quite some time. James and Max did miss her, but it's better to be raised by a single parent than by an irresponsible one. As for me, I'm moving on with my life, keeping myself busy with work and children. But the past will always stick to me like a parasite, but my revenge did satisfy my ego. Seeing her not getting what she wanted helped me overcome my mental health, and I continued with my life. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Ex-wife dumped our kids for her date. Lied about being broke while blowing my child support money with BF. I got full custody and sued. Now she's losing it all. I, 38M, have been divorced for a year. My ex-wife, 37F, and I have 2 kids aged 10 and 7. I have partial custody of the kids, and they spend half of the month with me, but I still have to send child support to my ex-wife for the time that they spend with her. My income is a lot higher than hers, so I have to pay alimony and child support. Our divorce was not a pleasant one, and we are not on good terms. I filed for divorce because we had been fighting a lot during the last few years of our marriage, and she'd completely changed as a person. During our last fight, she screamed at me and said she wished she'd never married me at all. So after that, I left her and filed for divorce. She didn't even try to contact me and try to get me back after that, and it's now been a year since our divorce. 6 months after our divorce, she started going out with another man, and I found out about it from a common friend. I was disappointed that she'd moved on so soon, but there was nothing I could do about it. So I just let it go and didn't bring it up with her at all. We only talked about the kids, and that was it, since there was nothing else we had to talk about. That's how it's been for the last 6 months, and even though I was a little hurt that she'd moved on so quickly, I knew that she was a good mother to our kids, so I didn't do anything that could hurt our family. However, recently she did something that convinced me that she's a horrible human being and doesn't even deserve to be around our kids. 10 days ago, I was away on a business trip and would be back in 3 days. Now technically, she was supposed to drop off the kids at my place on the second day, and then I'd take over from there since it was my turn to have them. But I told her about the trip and asked if she'd be able to look after them for just those 3 extra days until I returned. She'd agreed to it, and I even have screenshots of her saying yes, so I went on the business trip without any worries. But on the second evening, I got a call from my son where he was asking me where I was because their mother had dropped them off at my place, but I wasn't even there. They'd been ringing the door for 15 minutes, and nobody had come to the door, so they were waiting outside. It was freezing back home at the time, so I told them to go to our neighbor's house for a while until I sorted this whole mess out, because I believed that my ex-wife had made a mistake. Unfortunately, my neighbors were also out of town. The street that I lived on was pretty much empty on that day. I've recently just moved into a new house, and the area that I'm living in is still relatively new, so most of the houses haven't been moved into. Only the house opposite mine had been occupied by an old couple, but they weren't at home, and the other houses on the streets were empty and unoccupied. I was panicking already when my son told me that the neighbors weren't at home, so I told him to wait for a couple of seconds while I called his mom. Then I called my ex-wife and asked her to pick up the kids from my place and take them home because I didn't want them catching a cold from waiting in the snow. I expected her to apologize quickly for forgetting, then go right back, but to my shock and horror, she told me that the kids were my problem now since technically it was my turn to have them. I didn't know what to say, so I started requesting her to go back and not to do this to me, not for my sake, but the kids. She disconnected the call, so with shaky hands I tried to text her and asked her if she could please just take the kids back home, and she said that she was getting late for a date with her boyfriend, and they wanted to celebrate 8 months of them being together. By then, already more than 20 minutes had passed since my call with my son, and they'd been waiting in the cold for almost 35 minutes. With no other option, I had to call CPS and explain the situation to them. They were there at the location within minutes, and then they took the responsibility to drive my kids from my house to my parents' house, which is a little out of town. My kids are too young to have found their way there on their own, and they didn't know any bus routes or stuff, so they literally couldn't have gone there by themselves. My in-laws aren't alive and had passed away before my ex-wife and I even got married, and any other relatives that I had in the city, they weren't going to take care of my kids until I returned. So my parents' place was my safest bet. I also reported my ex-wife for neglecting our kids and putting them in danger on purpose, because by the time the cops had discovered them, they'd been sitting on the front steps of my door and were literally using my younger son's blanket to keep themselves warm. I felt like crap after they informed me of the state my kids were in, but felt much better after they'd been dropped off at my parents' house. They'd also placed my ex-wife under arrest for negligence within hours of my report, and I went to sleep that day feeling vindicated as hell, knowing that my kids were safe and sound and my ex-wife would have hell to pay once I came back. I'd already contacted my lawyer right after I'd been informed that my children were all right, and we were going to file for full custody as soon as I returned. That would mean an end to all the child support payments at least, and I couldn't wait to teach her a lesson. She and I didn't speak for the next couple of days, but I knew that she had been charged with just a misdemeanor. We didn't talk until I returned. Once I came back home from my trip, I went to see my kids first, and we had a long chat about whatever had happened. I apologized for not being able to be there for them in person and said that this would never happen again because now I was going to file for full custody and make sure that they were with me always. My eldest one looked a little too relieved and happy when I said that for me to be comfortable with it, because I'd always assumed that my ex-wife had been a good mom. She wasn't a lot of things, but to my knowledge, she wasn't a bad mother since she always seemed to care for the kids when we were together and even after our divorce. The kids didn't give me any reason to be concerned about how life was for them with their mother. However, after I asked why he was so happy about not having to live with his mom anymore, my son began to hesitate and said that his mom had forbidden him from talking to me about these things. I didn't like the sound of that, so I pressed on, and eventually he told me that for so long he and his brother had been having a really hard time at their mom's place because she was very strict. All of a sudden she wouldn't allow them to have any candy or junk while they were there for half of the month, and they were forced to eat the same food every day. The kind of food that my kids refer to as sick food. Not because it's sick in a cool way, but because it's what I feed them when they're sick and need to avoid anything that's too rich or heavy for their diet. So they'd be forced to eat tasteless porridge and some form of oats every single day for lunch and dinner. Only on the weekends would they get something different, but even that would just be toast with some dip. Their mother claimed that this was all for their good health, but I don't understand how a total lack of meat and vegetables in their diet for half the month was going to make them healthier. I also failed to understand why exactly she'd forbidden them from having candy and junk food. I understand that it's not good for their health if they have it on a regular basis, but I think letting them have some once in a while isn't going to harm them whatsoever. In fact, that's probably even better for them because then at least they won't develop weird issues about food like that in the future. They also told me a couple of things, like when they were at her place, they were only allowed to go to school and come right back. They weren't allowed to have friends over or go to sleepovers, so they had to save all of that for when they were living with me. My kids were also not allowed to buy anything that they wanted when she took them shopping. No toys, no books, no clothes, and not even something like chicken nuggets when they were in the supermarket. She only purchased things that she needed while they stood to the side and stayed quiet throughout, because otherwise she'd yell at them. Worst of all, she had forbidden them from talking to me about any of this, so they hadn't told me anything about the way they were being treated at their mother's house for so long. I didn't understand what was going on, so finally I decided to talk to my ex-wife and find out why she had been doing this to our kids. When I called her to confront her, she started off by yelling at me for calling the cops on her and reporting her, but I ignored all of that and asked her about everything that our kids had complained about. None of it added up because I paid her enough in child support to be able to afford the things my kids wanted, and yet they were complaining about never having enough. Not to eat, not to wear, and not even to play with. So I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she was in between jobs right now and couldn't afford to spend everything on the kids. That still didn't make sense because I was paying her alimony too, so she could maintain her standard of living. I have a decent income, and the alimony combined with the child support is also a substantial amount, which she can easily live off of without having to compromise our kids' standard of life. I argued with her for a while until she finally snapped and said that it wasn't any of my business what she did with her money, and then disconnected the call. Now that rubbed me the wrong way because this wasn't her money at all. It was my money that I was sending her for my kids, and she was supposed to use the child support for our kids and not for herself. I could tell that she'd been lying, so my lawyer and I decided that along with filing for full custody, we would also sue her for child abuse and neglect, since that was clearly what was happening here. She already had a criminal case on her hands because of what she'd done to our kids by forcing them to stay out in the cold while I was away on the trip, and now I'd be suing her as well. It's been 1.5 weeks since then, and a couple of days ago she was served, and the day itself she called me up and started shedding her fake crocodile tears. She hadn't contacted me in the middle at all, and only when she realized that she was going to lose custody of her kids did she call me. I had a sneaking suspicion that she didn't call me because she wanted our kids, but because she wanted the child support that came along with it. I told her on the phone the other day that she'd created the situation herself, and I could no longer trust her with the kids, so she started telling me that she was just trying to mess with me a little, and that she was going to come back for the kids anyway. I didn't buy it, and I told her that her tears weren't going to move me, and so she said that she couldn't survive without them. The child support was necessary for her to survive because she was in between jobs, and that confirmed what I already believed, that she wanted custody of our kids for the child support and not because she actually loved them. I was already disgusted by that, and I was about to hang up when I heard her friend, an attorney, yelling at her about how she needed to forget about the money from the child support and talk to me about the lawsuit instead. Then my ex-wife switched to talking about that instead and said that I shouldn't be suing her for something so petty because she already had a lot on her plate. She was already being prosecuted for the incident that took place while I was away, and I was also fighting her for custody, and now on top of all of that, I decided to add more to her troubles with a child protection lawsuit. She said that none of this was fair to her and claimed that I was doing this on purpose to hurt her because she'd moved on in life and I hadn't. I literally laughed at how delusional that statement was and then disconnected the call because there was no point in trying to argue with her. I didn't speak to her after that and focused on work and taking care of my kids. I knew already that my kids weren't going to go back to living with their mother at any cost, and I wasn't going to continue the child support payments either. So I've been looking for babysitters for when I'm away at work and they need to be looked after. As of now, my mom's living with me so she can take care of the kids until I come back from work. Yesterday, I received a call from my mom while I was at work where she told me to hurry back home because my ex-wife was at the door and was refusing to leave without speaking to me. I couldn't just come back home because I was in the middle of a workday and I had a meeting to attend, so I told her to put her on the phone with me. I spoke to her and told her that if she continued this crazy, psychotic behavior of hers, then I'd be forced to file for a restraining order against her as well, and then the situation would get worse for her. She didn't answer that and went straight to cribbing about how I was ruining her life on purpose. She said that I needed to have some compassion at the very least and take back the lawsuit since it was becoming very difficult for her to mentally cope with everything at once. The charges against her in the custody case that was supposed to begin in a couple of days, and then on top of that, the lawsuit which was also scheduled to take place this week. I've already informed my coworkers and boss that I'm going to have to take breaks regularly for the court cases that I'm a part of now, and they're fine with it as long as my work doesn't suffer too much. But my ex-wife says that since she's between jobs, she can't afford to spend so much time and money on a lawyer as well as attending the meetings. But that wasn't my problem. I told her the same thing that she'd said to me back when I called her when she dropped our kids off at my place. That this is her problem now and not mine. I'll concede that I said that purely out of spite, but I really think that it was mostly because of how she'd been treating me and the kids ever since the divorce, and I couldn't just let it slide every single time. She had alimony payments coming in monthly along with child support, and in spite of that, she deprived my children of a good home environment and scared them into not telling me anything about it as well. I think I've been totally fair in suing her as well as trying to get full custody because she'd been selfish, dishonest, and a failure at being a mother, so my being rude to her should have been the least of her concerns. But she just started bawling on the call like a baby and said that I was being horrible to her. She claimed that it was bad enough that she was going to lose custody of her kids. She didn't even think she stood a chance given the circumstances. But on top of that, I was going the extra mile to sue her as well, and she said it wasn't fair. I've been feeling really guilty about it even though I did tell her on the call that there was nothing that could be done now, as I was pursuing my ex-wife for neglecting our kids even though she was already facing charges and also had a custody case to deal with. Update 1. Hi everyone, 2 days have passed since I posted here, and I have come to the conclusion that there's no reason for me to feel guilty, thanks to you guys and also my parents who convinced me that I was doing the right thing. I'm sure now that the funds that I'd been sending her for the kids were not being used for them in the slightest, and she was spending it all on herself. She and I don't follow each other on social media, and I'm not exactly in touch with our common friends on a regular basis because of my work. But after I posted here and talked to my parents about this, I decided to discuss this with a couple of my friends as well because if there was any way to know what her real financial status was, it would be through them. My kids had told me a few hours after my post here that she would be at home most days, but on the weekends she'd be out for hours and leave them with the neighbors. Even some nights she would make some relative of hers babysit and she'd come back only in the morning. I think the longer I wait, the more my kids are going to open up, and I'm sure she'd instructed them not to talk about any of this to me, which is why they've been so quiet about all of this and are trying to keep it to themselves even now. So I knew something fishy was going on, and I finally decided to keep my morals and values aside for a while because now I absolutely had to do a little snooping. I had avoided doing that so far because I believed that after our divorce she was entitled to her privacy and space away from me. But that had been a huge mistake on my part because had I not unfollowed her social media profiles, I'd have been able to keep myself updated on what she was up to. I stalked her through a friend's account and found out that her social media was just full of photos of her partying at clubs, drinking, trips to the beach, and her romantic getaways with her boyfriend at expensive hotels. It looked nothing short of a social media influencer's feed, and I was shocked because from whatever she told me, I'd thought that she'd been struggling with money and all her bills, but it didn't show on her social media or in her lifestyle at all. My friends told me that they didn't talk about this to me because they didn't think it was their place to say anything or make a comment, and I don't blame them because I think I'd sort of distanced myself from all my old friends after the divorce. My ex-wife and I had been dating since college, and all our common friends were from college, so whenever I'd hear from them, I'd be reminded of her, which is why I pushed everyone away, and that clearly didn't work out well for me. But I'm getting back to them now anyway. Now I know that the whole thing was a lie and she just wanted more and more money out of me. She was also willing to force-feed our kids absolute crap and treat them badly just so she could save money instead of spending it on them like a total miser. I don't feel even an ounce of guilt anymore because she totally deserves everything awful that's happening to her right now. She's a horrible human being, and I'm no longer going to let myself feel bad for her anymore. Not after what I found out just now. Update 2. Hi folks. Thank you for all the comments on the post and also the updates. I'm very thankful for it. My ex-wife and I are currently in the middle of the lawsuit, and we have our second hearing scheduled for the day after tomorrow. She gave up on the custody battle pretty quickly and said that she was willing to terminate her parental rights because she couldn't afford to pay her lawyer for all 3 cases. So now the kids are fully under my custody, and I can finally breathe freely without worrying about what's going to happen. As for the lawsuit, it's pretty much going in my favor so far, and I think it'll continue that way because her boyfriend made the massive mistake of contacting me today. He thought I would sympathize with them if he told me their sob story, but all it did was piss me off even more because it just made me feel like my ex-wife had been putting her relationship of barely even a year above her own children, and that was unacceptable to me. Thankfully, I had recorded the phone call because initially I believed he was going to threaten me or something. Instead, he told me that he wanted me to stop the proceedings because my ex-wife had apparently been working really hard ever since she quit her job after the divorce. She's a freelancer, so work is hard to come by, but she's trying her best to support herself, her kids, and also him. I asked him if partying every other day and spending craploads of money on trips with her boyfriend was part of supporting herself, and he had no answer for that. But he insisted that it was all just for show and she was actually struggling with money. She'd also been paying for his tuition since he was a master's student, and that was coming out of her savings. When I heard that, I hung up and blocked him because now everything was finally adding up where all the money was going and why my children were being deprived of a good life even though I'd been paying child support regularly. She's going to have to pay for this in court, and I'll make sure of it. Update 3. Hey guys, long time no see. Thank you for all the concern and for asking about me. I am doing a lot better now, and so are the kids. They seem very happy here with me and hardly ever talk about their mother now. She lost the case, of course, and now she owes me a ton of money so she can no longer fool around with her boyfriend and her friends, which was weird anyway because this is a woman in her late 30s with 2 kids, so I don't even know what she was thinking blowing all her money at clubs and on vacations. It was ridiculous, but I have nothing to do with her anymore now. Once again, thank you for all the love and support. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Mother-in-law scammed our whole family for money to fund her daughter's drinking problem. Then she cursed my unborn baby, so I threw melted ice cream in her face. Hi! So recently my husband and I hosted a dinner party at our house to announce to our families that I was pregnant. We've been married for 2 years and found out about my pregnancy a couple of days ago. I've known my husband for 5 years. We met through friends in college and have been together since then. We're both 25 and had been working at the same company, but I quit that job to join one of my friends in her new business as a partner. We discussed it, and he agreed to hold down the fort financially until my friend and I were able to break even. It's been about a year since then, and we're doing great right now. So even my husband is planning to leave his job and join us. We are financially stable and think it's the perfect time for us to have a kid right now, even though we're pretty young. We were thrilled when we found out about the pregnancy. And in no time, we'd invited our families over to announce and celebrate this wonderful thing. My family is just me and my parents. I don't have any siblings, but I'm very close to my maternal aunt and her family. So I also invited her, my uncle, and my cousins, who are just a couple of years younger than me. That's my family, but my husband's family is a little more connected, so he had a lot of guests. Of course, his parents were invited, his maternal uncle and his family, his mom's uncle, and his maternal grandparents, too. He told me his sister wouldn't be able to make it because she's too sick, but we all know she's just too busy with the bottle to visit us. His sister's a bit of a mess and has been ever since her divorce last year. She lost her job a couple of months ago and has been living with her parents since then. She doesn't even look for anything new. All she does is drink and sleep. So I was relieved to learn that she wouldn't be attending because I didn't want any drama on such a happy occasion. But I guess that was destined to happen since my mother-in-law was invited. My mother-in-law and I aren't the best of friends, but we're also not on bad terms. She's just too frustrating to deal with because she clearly has a favorite child, and it happens to be her daughter, the older sibling. She's the one who's been enabling her daughter so far, in spite of my husband and her own husband's protests. We differ on that, but I didn't say anything about it because it's not my family, and hence not my place to say anything. It was only polite to invite, or so my husband and I invited his side of the family to the event, too. Initially, we'd only planned to have his parents over, but when my mother-in-law found out that I was having my aunt and her family over, too, she told my husband to do things the right way, and made him invite other relatives, too. He did so because he didn't want to fight with her right before announcing something so big. But that meant we wouldn't have the intimate celebration we'd wanted. I was a bit miffed about it but didn't say anything because, like my husband, I didn't want to kick up a fuss right before the announcement of something so happy and ruin the happy vibe with awkwardness. So we called everyone over and it was all going so well, too, until after the announcement. We told everybody just before lunch was served, and everyone was so thrilled for us. I got a lot of congratulatory hugs and pats on the back, as did my husband, but my mother-in-law didn't even get up from her place to congratulate us and just sat there with a weird smile on her face. We didn't know what that meant, but we didn't care because this was a happy moment for us, and we wanted to keep it that way. Then we served lunch after the announcement. Everybody loved the food that my husband and I had made, and we got a lot of compliments from everyone, except my mother-in-law again, who was quiet all of a sudden. Afterward, everyone was just sitting around and chatting normally when my mother-in-law suddenly piped up and asked me if we were financially ready to have the baby. Because they're really expensive, and we should think about the finances, too, before we rush into anything. That was weird and awkward, but I handled that well, I think. I told her that the business that I'd started with my friend had been doing well and our income was enough to be able to support ourselves and a new baby. My husband made some jokes, and we moved on, avoiding the awkward topic. But she wasn't done just yet. She then went on to ask me exactly how much I earned per month, and that caught me off guard. I'm not one to shy away from discussing finances when it comes to it, but this was neither the time nor the place to be discussing stuff like this, and I didn't know why she kept bringing that up. I told her that I wasn't comfortable discussing my finances in front of the entire family and that if she was really that concerned, then we could speak in private after that. So then she brought up something totally irrelevant that had happened a couple of weeks back and put me on the spot. 3 weeks ago, my mother-in-law called me up out of the blue while my husband was out with his friends. She doesn't usually call me unless it's to ask about my husband, but that day she told me she wanted to vent a little, and I agreed to let her because I thought it would be a good bonding opportunity for us. She went on and on about her hard-to-beat daughter, and how much of a struggle it had become for her to take care of an adult without any financial help from her. She complained about her daughter and her drinking problem, the fact that she wasn't even trying to find a job and was relying on her parents for a home and food, even when she was almost 30 now. Then she complained about how this was eating into her and her husband's savings, and she couldn't go on like this anymore. I sympathized with her and told her I understood where she was coming from, but after some time, she abruptly ended the call and told me that she needed to go, then just hung up without even saying goodbye. I thought it was weird but didn't think much of it and forgot about it after a while. While at the party, she brought it up again and asked me that the day she'd called me, I hadn't even offered to help her with money for her daughter, even though I was financially stable and could very well afford to help her out. She totally put me on the spot, and I had nothing to say to her. Neither did my husband because he was just as flabbergasted. She said something about how we should put family first, and that I should have told my husband, and we should have offered to help my sister-in-law. Then went on to ask if we'd be helping out now. I was going to say that I was sorry that I didn't, but before I could, my father-in-law got up from the couch and really angrily asked her when exactly she'd stop scamming all our relatives using their daughter as an excuse. Everyone was quiet because my father-in-law was a man who rarely ever lost his temper, so if he was yelling, that meant something had happened. We were all shocked and confused, but it all became clear after my mother-in-law stormed out right after my father-in-law asked her that question. She snapped at him and told him that she wasn't going to tolerate this disrespect from him and walked out of the house. But he stayed back and explained everything to us. So apparently, my mother-in-law had been calling up a bunch of people and complaining about her own daughter and their alleged financial situation, like she'd done with me. But unlike me, most people felt for her act and sent her money to help out. That went directly into my sister-in-law's purse, and she used it to buy drinks for herself but did not get the help she needed. My mother-in-law was complaining to people about her daughter's drinking problem and using it as a way to gain sympathy, so they'd send her money, which she then used to fund her daughter's addiction, so she wouldn't have to spend her own money. And she didn't want to force her daughter to get a job, so this was the only way she could enable her daughter without putting her own money at risk. So far, it had been working out well for her because she'd mostly been borrowing from her friends and her own family, including the people at the party the other day, who were pissed when they realized that they'd been fooled by my mother-in-law. But then she tried to pull the same crap with her husband's sister, and she didn't fall for it because she knew really well how my mother-in-law had been supporting her daughter's behavior. She'd called my father-in-law right after the phone call with my mother-in-law and told him all about how she'd been trying to manipulate her into sending her money. When my father-in-law confronted my mother-in-law about it 3 days before the dinner, they got into a really bad argument about it. My father-in-law thought it was disgusting and humiliating that she was going to such lengths and sort of begging her friends and family to send her money just so she could continue to support their daughter's addiction. And this was kind of a scam because it wasn't as if my in-laws were poor or struggling with money. My father-in-law was still a practicing dental surgeon, and my mother-in-law had retired from her position as the HR head just a couple of years back. They had enough savings to even send their daughter to a really good rehab facility, which we all know is quite expensive. But instead of that, my mother-in-law was scamming people to save her own money but still supporting her daughter's terrible drinking habits. They hadn't been speaking for the days leading up to the party but had decided that they'd pretend everything was okay just for our sake. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for them because my mother-in-law was right back to her guilt-tripping ways, and my father-in-law couldn't stand the way she was behaving. He apologized to all of us for ruining the day and left shortly after that, as did everyone else. Then it was just me and my husband, and he was seething that his mother had been doing this behind our backs. I was glad that I hadn't picked up on what she was hinting at over the phone back when she'd called me because obviously, if I'd offered to send her money to help her out, then that would have just been used to fund my sister-in-law's addiction, and that'd be a total waste of money. My husband and I were both a little upset that the party had ended so badly, but nevertheless, we decided that we'd end the day on a good note and got a tub of vanilla ice cream for us. We put on a movie and watched it while having ice cream. At around 10 o'clock, he left the room to go brush his teeth before bed. But I still wasn't done with my ice cream. I'd taken a second helping, and I'm one of those people who wait for it to melt a little before I dig in. I was waiting in the living room when I heard a knock on the door, and when I opened it, I saw my mother-in-law standing outside, looking furious. The second I opened the door, she started screaming at me and told me that I was the reason her marriage had come unraveled today, and that her husband of more than 3 decades had now moved out and was going to file for divorce from her. And for some reason, I was the one she decided to blame for all of this. My husband was still in the washroom, and because it's a little further inside the house, he couldn't hear his mom yelling at the front door, so he didn't come out to check either. I was trying to explain to my mother-in-law that whatever happened had nothing to do with me. I didn't even say anything that day and was even about to apologize to her before her husband interrupted me. I tried to reason with her, but she wasn't ready to even hear me out and instead decided to say that she wished something terrible would happen to my baby, and maybe then I'd understand what she'd been going through as a mom. I couldn't take that, and I don't know what came over me, but I totally lost it. I didn't have anything in my hands except for the bowl of ice cream, so that's what I threw right at her face. It had mostly melted by then, so it was a bunch of liquid ice cream that went onto her face and the front of her dress. I had enough self-control not to throw the bowl because that would have seriously injured her, and she probably would have sued me for that. I regretted it almost instantly because she started screaming like she'd been shot when I threw the ice cream at her, and my husband came rushing to check out what had happened. He brought his mother in and offered her a wet towel and wipes to clean herself up, and I helped him out to find those, even though his mom was screaming the worst cuss words she could think of, which I think was a bit of an overreaction. After she'd calmed down a bit, she told me to go to hell, booked a cab, and then went away. I was able to explain what had happened only after my mother-in-law had left, and my husband had actually found the incident pretty hilarious. He said that his mom totally deserved it and that I shouldn't even have bothered to help afterward because she definitely didn't deserve that. He said that whatever his mother had said about our unborn child was really cruel, and me throwing my ice cream at her was probably an underreaction, and any other more hormonal woman would have probably thrown the whole bowl at her or something, so she was lucky that it didn't happen to her. He's taking this lightly, but I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not a person who loses control like this, and I feel terrible about what I did to her. I spoke to my parents about it, too, and they said that while they don't support what she said, it would have also been very dangerous for me if I'd accidentally thrown the bowl at her because that would have hurt her really badly. I don't know if I should apologize to her or not right now, or if I overreacted. Am I the a-hole for throwing ice cream in my mother-in-law's face after she said she wished something terrible would happen to my baby? Update 1. Hey everyone. Thanks for the comments on my original post. It's been a week since the incident took place, and I was almost going to apologize to my mother-in-law in spite of everyone's comments. But I'm glad she proved to me that she deserved every bit of what had happened to her. I was going to apologize to her today, but she sent me a video message really late at night yesterday of her and her daughter cursing me out. Both of them were completely drunk, which was evident from the way they were behaving. Also, the things they were saying were really vile and disgusting, and I don't even want to repeat what they were wishing upon me and my family in that video, including my baby, who hadn't even been born yet. They were stooping down to levels that weren't even there, and for your sake and my own, I don't want to repeat what they said here, but just know that they were disgusting things. My husband almost reported them to the police, but I told him not to because it just wouldn't be worth it and would only escalate the drama and the problems. I was already a pregnant working woman. I couldn't handle any more on my plate than whatever I already had to deal with. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law are living on their own now because my father-in-law moved out the day after the ice cream incident and has been living with his brother since then. I showed him the video that his wife and daughter had sent me, intending to help him with the divorce, and he broke down while apologizing to me on their behalf. It was really upsetting to see him that way when we visited him this evening, and I almost started crying myself because my father-in-law has been a father figure to me, too. My husband was very quiet throughout because, of course, he was upset, but he's not very good at showing his emotions. I know for a fact he'll keep this to himself and cry by himself, which is fine, but I just hope he doesn't overburden himself or anything. We visited my father-in-law today with the purpose of finalizing the divorce attorney. He'd spoken to a couple of people, but we put him in touch with a friend of ours who's been practicing for a few years now and specializes in divorces and prenups. My in-laws had been married for over 3 decades, so the divorce wasn't going to be an easy one, and we wanted him to have the best legal advice for the settlement and everything. Things could get even more complicated if my mother-in-law decided to contest the petition, so we felt like we should step in. I'm happy to help him because with the kind of wife and daughter he has, he should have all the help he needs. Update 2. Hi everyone, my father-in-law filed for divorce last week, and this week my mother-in-law has pulled out all the stops in her attempts to stop him from leaving. She's gone to his brother's house where he's still living and has tried to fight and argue her way into winning him back. Don't ask me why she thought that would work, especially if she's trying to win him back. She even reached out to me and apologized because she thought that that would somehow help her case. But it didn't. I told her that I forgive her, but I don't want to speak to her. And I definitely cannot help her in sorting things out with her husband. He's his own person, and his decision to leave her had not been influenced by me. So there was no point in trying to make me fix something I wasn't a part of. I couldn't help them, and I can't believe I had to explain that to her a second time. She's been hysterical and has apologized to pretty much her entire family by now. Whoever she'd borrowed money from so far, they'd all been kind and gracious enough not to ask for it back. But she's been offering to pay them all back because she thinks that'll help her reconcile with my father-in-law. I haven't been able to meet him for a while now since I've been busy with work and stuff, and I'm trying to work faster than usual so that I can take days off for doctor's appointments and stuff like that just in case. So it's just been my husband who's kept in touch with his dad, and he doesn't think it's likely that his father will go back to his mom. Apparently, it's not just the scamming of relatives for money or her enabling their alcoholic daughter. There's a lot more to their marriage than what we get to see, and his dad has only started opening up about it after he filed for divorce. Now that I know what I do know about my mother-in-law, I honestly can't believe my father-in-law even stayed with her for so long because that is one messed up woman. She's had a history of being dishonest when it comes to money and had a lot of debt racked up over the years that she kept a secret from my father-in-law in the initial years of their marriage. But he'd found out about it somehow, and he helped her pay off those debts. He'd made her promise that she'd be transparent about her finances then on, and she'd agreed to that. They weren't as well off back then, so at least she had an excuse to borrow money. But now she didn't even have that. She was just being stingy and dishonest. Besides that, there was also her terrible behavior in general and how she'd always taken her husband for granted. Even at this age, she refused to hire a maid to do the housework and would say that they'd split the household chores between the two of them. But most days she'd say that she wasn't feeling up to it, and my father-in-law would end up having to do most of the chores, which made his arthritis even worse. She didn't speak to him nicely. She insisted that they continue to infantilize their grown daughter and support her alcoholism instead of just sending her to a good rehabilitation center and doing everything that my father-in-law asked her not to. So there was no other way he could deal with this situation now, and he just had to end this marriage before he wasted more of his life with this woman. My father-in-law said that he's had enough and wants his own life separate from her now, and I say, good for him. Update 3. Hey people! I haven't had the opportunity to come online on Reddit for the last couple of weeks because of work and hospital visits. I had a health scare a few weeks ago because my blood sugar had fallen low. I've been in and out of the hospital for the last couple of weeks because I was afraid that this would lead to complications in the pregnancy. But thankfully, my doctor told me I had nothing to worry about. I'd just been a little too paranoid and had completely switched up my diet, which is what led to the blood sugar fall. I'm okay now though, and as healthy as ever. Now coming to what most of you guys have been asking for, an update on the situation with my mother-in-law. The divorce is ongoing, and they're in the middle of negotiations right now. My mother-in-law gave up on trying to win him back and decided not to contest the divorce, but she's been very annoying to deal with when it comes to the division of their assets and property. Once again, over 30 years of marriage, they have a lot of finances that need to be separated and property that needs to be divided. The main bone of contention right now between them is the house that they've been living in. My father-in-law's proposition is very fair and reasonable. That they sell the house and split the money because that's how they'd purchased the house in the beginning. They'd pulled their money together and bought that house within a year of their marriage. So it would only be fair to do what my father-in-law suggested. But my mother-in-law wants it all for herself, so that's where they're stuck right now. But I don't think she's going to get her way, and even if she does, my father-in-law already has enough money to retire and live his life comfortably. My mother-in-law cannot afford the luxury because she has to pay back the people she borrowed money from, which only seems fair because she had promised to do that when she was trying to get back with her husband. My husband has cut all ties with his mother and sister, as have I. They haven't tried to get back in touch with us either, and I don't think they will given the circumstances and how we've openly been supporting my husband's dad in this thing. He's always been closer to his father anyway, so this is no big surprise to her at all. Either way, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that we have good news to share about the divorce in a few weeks or so. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Caught my girlfriend of 6 years cheating on me with my own father in our bed. So I kicked her out, exposed them both, and then asked out her sister. I am 26 years old and my GF, who I will call Shah, is 24. My father, who I may refer to as Clark, is 52, and my mom, Dee, is 50. It's surreal to be in a situation like this. Never in a million years did I think it could happen to me, but here we are. This is my first time using Reddit, but I thought I'd give it a try for some advice. Based on other posts, it seems like people appreciate some backstories, so I'll do my best to provide all the relevant details. However, this has only been going on for a week, so please forgive me if I get emotional while sharing my story. Shah and I first met during her freshman year of college. We met at a frat party. She was a part of a sorority and my frat was putting together a party or a fundraiser of sorts. But it was easy to bump into each other and strike up a conversation because we share the same mutual friends. Anyways, it wasn't until later that we discovered we grew up only a few towns away from each other. Whenever we went home, I would offer her a ride, and it only added about 30 minutes to our trip overall, so it was really no trouble. As we spent more time together on campus and outside of school, our friendship turned into something more. We come from close-knit families, and we both had the support of our loved ones when we told them about our relationship. Our families quickly accepted each other, and our love for each other continued to grow. When we met, I only had about 2 years left of my degree while she was really just starting. So, naturally, I graduated first. After I graduated, I moved back home about 3 hours away, where I was offered a fantastic job opportunity with great pay. While Shah was still finishing up her studies, I would visit her whenever possible, and she would do the same when she came home. Long distance was hard only because things were getting pretty serious for her in her studies, so there wasn't much time to talk, but we managed. She was wanting to pursue law after her initial degree, so her nose was really crammed in the books, and I really respected her for that. She was driven, and that's why I loved her. I had it all planned out too. I knew she was the one. I just knew it deep down in my bones. I was going to save up enough to buy a place back in the city. I knew she had quite some time ahead of her in school before she could actually practice law, so I knew I'd have to be the one to compromise, to move back into the city and hopefully find a transfer there, since I was making some good money. Once she graduated from her degree, she moved in with me in an apartment I was renting back home where I grew up until she applied for law school. She said she wanted to take a semester off before starting back up again, and I agreed. I thought that would give us some time to find a place in the city that we wanted to start our lives together in. And now on to the part you've all been waiting for. Looking back now, there were many things that I overlooked and dismissed as my father simply trying to welcome my ex into our family. Like his constant phone calls to her, which they would brush off as just discussing upcoming family events. One time when Shah was in the shower and her phone rang, I saw it was my dad. I answered and he sounded surprised and upset when he realized it was me. He said he wanted to talk to Shah about something she said she needed help with. I asked him what it was, and he said it was something around the apartment that she said she asked me to fix, but I just didn't get around to. I sort of laughed and said, "Okay, I feel like there could have been something I maybe missed, but I don't ever remember her asking me to fix anything. Usually I'm pretty good with that sort of thing." He said that maybe he was mistaken, and we ended the call after a minute. Looking back now, I can't believe I didn't see the signs sooner. It was just another normal day when I found out. Shah usually made us breakfast before I left for work. She gave me a kiss goodbye and told me to have a good day, just like every other day. During my drive to work, I remembered some important paperwork that I had forgotten for a meeting at 2 p.m. I brushed it off and planned to go home during my lunch break to pick it up. Throughout the day, Shah texted me mundane things like what we should have for dinner and that she did the laundry. She said something like, "We should go to the new bakery that opened up in town to try some of these gourmet cookies." When lunchtime rolled around, I didn't bother telling her that I was coming home because it was just going to be a quick in and out, and she usually took the time to study for her LSAT test. So, I left work without saying anything and headed home. As I pulled into the parking lot of our building, I noticed a truck that resembled my father's in visitor parking. But I didn't think much of it and just went inside. I figured that maybe he had cleared things up with Shah on what I had missed fixing and they were sorting it out. I also thought that I wasn't going to hear the end of it from Shah or my father for this one. Not that she nagged me or anything, but just that I was too busy for her. Or that's the last time she trusted me to do anything around our home. That and the whole emasculating thing, having to get your dad to come to the rescue, didn't really sit well with me. Anyways, I opened the door and, to my surprise, there was a trail of clothing leading to our bedroom. My father's work boots were at the front door. His pants sprawled out. Her clothes all over. Her black bra, pink G-string. Then came the sound of moaning. Well, that's not a sound you want to hear coming from your own father. But I knew it was him right away. I felt sick to my stomach. I don't know why, but I had to see it for myself. I took out my phone to record because I knew no one was going to believe me. It just felt like autopilot. I gathered all the clothes on the floor in one hand and my phone in the other. Then I walked down the hallway, recording as I walked to our bedroom. The door was open, and I stood there for about a minute before throwing their clothes onto them as they were going at it. They both jumped, looked at me. I'm looking at my father, bare naked with nothing but his socks on, just boning my girlfriend, the love of my life. In that moment, it was just too much for me to handle. My father noticed I was recording and panicked, trying to cover himself up while telling me to stop recording. Shah was throwing pillows at me. He reached for my phone, but I pushed him back and he fell into the dresser and then onto the ground. Shah shrieked in surprise. Then I turned my camera towards her. I was like, "How could you? What do you have to say for yourself?" And then a bunch of things that a parent would say to their child, scolding them. My father scrambled up after trying to put his clothes back on. I told them that I just needed to grab something for work and then I'd be heading back after working my ass off for her in our future. Then I said, but who knows what the future holds now. I said something to the effect of, "She just all over my life and made a fool out of me." I said if either of them were still here when I returned, I would be sending this video to everyone they knew. Then I ended the recording. I put my phone in my pocket and I told him he was dead to me. I told him I can't wait to tell Mom. And then he got up, furious, and said that he couldn't tell her. He lunged at me, trying to get my phone out of my pocket, and I told him, "I'll send the video to her right now if he lays another hand on me." So then he let go and started pleading to me to not say anything and that they'd never do it again. I told him that I'm giving him the opportunity to tell Mom what he's been doing with my girlfriend. I said, "Mom's finding out either way." I sat in my car trying to compose myself as I received a call from one of my bosses at work, asking where I was. I hadn't realized how long I had been sitting in the car for, but I assured her that I was on my way back. I had gathered what I needed and told her that I was on my way to the office. But as soon as I walked in, she could tell something was wrong just by looking at me. I brushed off her concern, insisting that it was nothing and that I would be okay and that I was looking forward to the meeting. Still not buying it, she asked for an explanation and I showed her the video on my phone. She watched silently, realizing that not only was my GF cheating on me, but it was with my own father, the one guy I had always trusted the most. Offering to help in any way she could, she suggested I'd take some time off. She said they'd be fine in the meeting without me and that she'd understand if I wanted to take some time off. But I declined, telling her I just needed a minute and that the best thing I could do right now was get my mind off of things and rock this meeting that I prepped really hard for. Putting on a fake smile for everyone during the meeting, I pretended like everything was normal. My boss couldn't understand how I could put up such a front, and I told her that I had to. I had to have control over something because it felt like the rest of my life was falling apart. She said if I needed a place to stay, her and her husband had a basement suite available. Before you think she's hitting on me, she's not. This kind, sweet woman is in her 60s and she's like a second mother to me. I thanked her and I told her that I'd let her know. I felt sick as the day went on. I was dreading going back to the apartment. I didn't want to see her. I hoped to God that my father wasn't there still. I kept checking my phone to see if there was any missed calls or texts, but there was nothing from Shah or Clark or my mom. I don't remember the drive home, but when I came home, the weight of everything hit me and I just cried in my car for a really long time before going upstairs. When I walked in, she was sitting in the living room on the couch and looked like absolute dog. As soon as she saw me, she got up to hug me, but I pushed her off. I told her she had to pack her things and go. I said, "I had plans for us. I was going to marry you. I waited for you." She said, "I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. It's not what you think it is." And I'm like, how is it not exactly what I think it is? Pretty sure my father was inside of you unless he's built like a Ken doll and you were just bumping bumps, but I doubt that. She started sobbing and said that he forced himself onto her. I said, I doubt that. I said, how long has this been going on for? She said, not long. And I said, what's not long? There's no point in bullshitting to me now. Then she tells me that there was a brief thing last Christmas when I went to bed early because I had too much to drink and they kept drinking in the basement and ended up making out on the couch. Then she said they both woke up and acted like nothing happened until she moved in with me a few months ago and he asked her to come over. She said she didn't want to at first, but he said that he'd tell me what they did together. I said, you still went over? Well, I told her to leave and she wouldn't leave. She literally fell to her knees and told me that she didn't mean to and she was so sorry and she'd do anything. I said, okay, well then I'm leaving. And then she tried to grab onto my knees like she was some little kid, and I tried to walk away to pack my bags. But she held on and I ended up dragging her down the hall to our bedroom. Anyways, I ended up packing her because I decided I wasn't leaving my home. I said, it's time you get the hell out of here. I carried her bags all the way to the hallway outside of our apartment while she was sobbing and completely losing it. I threw her bags out into the hallway and pried her off my legs. I said if she doesn't leave, I'm calling the cops and sending the video to everyone we know. And then that was that. She got up and left. I called my mom later that evening and she asked if I'd seen my father. I said that I had. She said that she hasn't seen him all day and he was supposed to be back from work already. There was a moment that I had thought about not telling her and just hoping my father would tell her. But then I knew that my mom deserved better, so I told her everything. I said, I'm sorry to tell you over the phone like this, but... And then I just let it all out. I sat there sobbing like a baby to my mom. Apparently, my dad came back the next day and tried to act like he had just gotten drunk at his brother's place and lost track of time and passed out. But she said she knew everything. She kicked him out of the family home and we don't know where he's been staying, and frankly don't care. But I guess he's been fired from his job. Thank you for reading. Maybe I'll be back with an update. Well, I'm back. For a while, I thought about not sending the video to anyone. But then I was sitting at my apartment, thinking of the lives that the man I used to call my father and ex just ruined with their selfishness, and I just couldn't stand for that. There was no way they were going to walk away unscathed from this. It was a small town, so there were a bunch of rumors going around about why my mom kicked out Clark. I really just couldn't handle the drama anymore, and my mom was too nice to say anything. She kept saying he was on a fishing trip. So I sent the video to a family chat, and I sent the video to my entire friend group and all of our mutual friends. I just wanted them to hurt like my mom and I. I'll never forget seeing him on my bed with my girlfriend, my love, the woman I wanted to spend forever with, and the woman I had admired and adored. I realized I didn't know her, and I didn't know who Clark was all along. My whole life was a lie, and I didn't want my mom to have to make up lies to try to protect some scumbag. After I sent the video, I heard from Shah's older sister, Shay, and she told me she was so sorry for what Shah did. She said she was really rooting for me and I did a lot for her. She said that she still wants to be in my life. I decided to shoot my shot and ask her out, and we're actually going for coffee next week. She studied psychology in Edinburgh and was now in the city practicing in her own clinic. Anyways, apparently the video completely leveled Shah's life and her parents aren't talking to her. They aren't helping her with school anymore either. They were paying for her schooling, and so since they've cut her off, she's no longer going to law school. She's also apparently couch surfing with some chick she was at the sorority with. My dad's staying in a camper on some random guy's land outside of town. Anyways, I feel good and I'm looking forward to seeing Shay. You never know what the future holds. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I, 25F, recently allowed my estranged father to move in with me after his retirement, hoping to build a bond, and it backfired really badly. I am in a lot of confusion right now about what to do. It all started 10 years ago after my father abandoned me and left me to live with my aunt. I was 15 years old at the time, and my mother had passed away from an aneurysm 4 years before that incident. My mother was my dad's second wife, and he already had 2 children before that, slightly older than me. I never got along with my step-siblings, and I don't have any contact with them now. In fact, Any relationship that I had with him ended as soon as my dad dropped me off at my aunt's house that day. I was never particularly close to my father, but we did have a decent relationship. I was actually always closer to my mother, and my dad and I had a normal civil relationship while I used to live with him. My step-siblings would spend half the month with us, and then they would move to their mother's house for the rest of the month. So I did not have to put up with them for long either. Things were really bad until my mother passed away, and then it started deteriorating. My dad became really weird after my mom passed away and started acting very differently. I was the only person who used to live with him on a permanent basis, and my step-siblings would come and go. He started drinking, sleeping less, and skipping work, and things were just overall bad. He also stopped speaking to me and would only talk to me if he needed something. Apart from that, we wouldn't talk to each other because both of us were grieving in our own ways. That went on for a couple of years, and when I was 15, one day he told me that we were going to visit my aunt. My mom's older sister had never married and had no kids of her own. I had a good relationship with her, and I often visited her, but never with my father. So I knew that there was something strange going on that day, but I did not want to fight with him, so I went along with it. He drove me to my aunt's place, but when it was time to get out of the car and go in, he told me that he was going to get some to eat and told me to go ahead and he would come by later after he had something. I tried to tell him to come along with me, and I was sure that there would be something to eat at my aunt's place, but he said that he wanted to get a drink before he went in, since this was going to be difficult for him, and so I did not argue with him much. I just went in on my own. Once I was inside, my aunt said that she knew that this was going to be difficult for me to accept since Dad couldn't do this anymore. I had no idea what she was talking about, and when I asked her to elaborate, she was the one who finally told me that this was going to be a permanent thing. She told me that apparently my dad had discussed things with her and had told her that he did not think he would be able to carry on as a father anymore, and he believed that it would be for the best if I moved in with her and lived with my aunt instead. His older kids had already left for college, and I was the only one left behind. I would leave in a couple of years for college, so he wanted me to have a good home and a decent environment to grow up in until then. With him, I would always be miserable, and he wanted me to have the best of everything, so he was leaving me to be with my aunt. When my aunt told me all of this, I was really shocked because he had not said a word of this to me, and I had no idea that this was going to happen. Judging by my expressions, my aunt also realized that I did not know about this, and she told me that she had been given strict instructions by my father not to speak about this to me until he had dropped me off. Now she finally understood why. She then hugged me and told me that everything would be fine, and I'm really thankful for that because she really made sure that it was. She stepped up as both my parents and really took care of me, something that I will always be grateful for. A couple of days after that, my father came by to drop all my belongings off at my aunt's house, but like before, he did not step foot into the house, and neither did he try to talk to me. By then, I had accepted what was going on, and I did not try to talk to him. I don't think we had anything left to say to each other at that point. For years had passed since my mother passed away, and we had pretty much stopped speaking to each other. This change was just making things more permanent. After he had completed the legal formalities with my aunt with regard to my custody, he was gone from our lives permanently. I did not hear from him again, and I honestly had no idea what he had been up to because he cut ties with all of his family as well. Not even my grandparents, his parents, had any idea where he was or what he was up to. My step-siblings knew about it, presumably, but they never told us anything, and I never asked. It was like he disappeared. It has been 10 years since that happened, and life has been good to me after that. As I had mentioned above, my aunt stepped up and took the place of both my parents. She was my mother and my father, and she provided for me in every way possible. Thankfully, all my grandparents had a college fund for me, so my education was not a problem, and I was able to go to college and finish my degree. After I graduated, I got a job and currently, I'm living my best life. I'm a software developer, I make a comfortable living, and I live nicely. Things have been good for me and I'm grateful for that. But 2 weeks ago, my father got back in touch with me, and it was the most unexpected thing that ever happened to me. He got through to me via email since that was the only public way to contact him, and wrote to me saying that he had something very important to talk to me about and sent me his number so I could contact him if I wanted to get in touch with him. I thought about it for one whole day, and in the end, I decided to just bite the bullet and make the call. I did not discuss it with my aunt or my grandparents before doing it because I wanted this to be my own decision, and I did not want them to influence it. I don't know if that was the right thing to do or not, but it's already done, so I can't help it anyway. When I called that number, my father picked up the phone almost instantly, and he actually sounded really happy to talk to me, but I was not that happy. I had no idea how to feel about any of it, and I had mixed emotions. I heard his voice for the first time, and then he apologized to me for everything that he had put me through and told me that he had failed at being a good father, and he knew it. I could tell he was emotional, and so was I. But right now, I don't know if he was acting or if he was genuinely feeling sorry about what he did. But at that moment, it seemed pretty genuine, and I kind of fell for it. He told me that he had spent every single day of the last 10 years thinking about how he had done me so wrong and wanted to make up for it, but he hadn't known how, since he did not think there was anything in this world that he could do to compensate for what he had done. He told me that he should have been a better father, especially after I had just lost my mother, but he was so consumed by the grief of losing his wife that he completely forgot about my feelings, and he knew that he had failed to give me the kind of environment that I needed to heal. Apparently, now the universe was punishing him for everything that he had done in the past, or rather what he had failed to do in the past. These were his words, and I found it really confusing. So when I asked him what was going on, he told me that he had retired, and now he was completely on his own. On the phone call, he told me that now that he had retired, he needed a place to stay. He told me that he had sold the house that we used to live in a couple of years ago and decided to travel, but now that he was almost 60, he was not interested in that kind of life anymore and wanted to have some stability again. He told me that he just needed a couple of weeks to find a place, and until then, he wanted to request that I let him live within my house instead. I was a little confused because we had not been in touch for 10 years, and he could have just as easily asked one of his other kids to help him out here. So I asked him if my step-siblings were not willing to let him move in with them. Sadly, he told me that they had families of their own now and they did not want to let him stay with them because apparently that would be too disturbing for them, and so I was his last resort. He told me that he would be fine with it if I also declined, but he just wanted to give it a chance because he also wanted to make up for the past and give us a real shot at having a good relationship since he was also getting older and wanted to make things right before he passed away. It was emotionally charged. I couldn't say no, so I told him that I was okay with it and he could live with me until he found a place for himself. He was really happy when I agreed, and he told me that I would not regret it because he would make sure that he made me realize exactly how important I had always been to him. I wanted to have a real relationship with him, and I may be foolish, but that's who I am as a person, so I agreed to let him stay with me until he could find a place of his own. I gave him my address, and within 2 days, he showed up at my house. However, to my surprise, he did not show up alone. While we had been talking on the phone, he had never mentioned a single thing about bringing along another person, but when he showed up at my place, there was a young woman around my age with him, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out who that was because I had never seen that person before. For a second, I was scared that it might be another daughter, and that would mean that he had been cheating on my mom, since the woman could not have been older than 30. But then I got an even bigger shock, and he told me that the woman that he had shown up at my house with was actually his girlfriend. I did not say anything at the time. I just welcomed him in and decided to talk to him about it later in person because I did not want to make her feel awkward. She seemed like a nice person and even greeted me very sweetly and everything. So I decided to talk to my dad about that in private without embarrassing her. After they had settled in, a couple of hours later, I decided to ask my dad if I could speak to him in private because his girlfriend was taking a nap and he was awake, so she would not be disturbed. When we were finally away from his girlfriend, I asked him what was going on, and then he started telling me the full story. He told me that he had actually lost a lot of money recently since he had tried to start a new business a couple of years ago, but unfortunately that business had not done well and so he had to return all the money that had been invested, and that had left him broke. So he had to sell the house because of that, not because he was traveling like he had initially told me, and he sold the house just a couple of months ago, not a bunch of years ago like he had said. He told me that he had to lie about it because otherwise I never would have let him move in with me, and he was right, I never would have done that. He told me that he just wanted to talk to me and make things right with me, that was his intention, but he also really needed my help, and his other kids had turned their back on him in his times of trouble, so I was his only option. I felt kind of bad that he had lied to me, and I had half a mind to kick him out, but his condition was so pitiful that I couldn't bring myself to kick him out. He was actually on the verge of tears while he was narrating his story to me and told me that he had believed that he could turn his life around by starting a new business. But he had forgotten that he was an aged man and there was no chance that it would work. It was a bunch of emotional baloney to manipulate me, and I'm a gullible fool, so it worked. I tend to go with what my heart says instead of what my brain believes, and that's my big mistake. After I found out the truth from him, I decided to tell him that he could no longer live with me and that he had to leave on an immediate basis because I was really pissed off that he had lied to me. But then he literally started pleading with me and told me that none of his other kids were speaking to him and he did not have friends that he could count on, so I was literally his only option, and if I kicked him out, he would have nowhere else to go. I tried to argue with him, but he started crying, and he is pretty old. It hurt me to watch him cry, so I told him that he could stay with me, but he would have to start looking for a new place, and I was not going to allow this to go on indefinitely. In a couple of months, he would have to move out, and I would make sure of it. So I did give him a deadline, and then that discussion was over. They have been living with me since then, and it has been normal. They have not tried to do anything, and I was fine with this arrangement because I knew that my dad was going to leave in a couple of months anyway. I have minimized the amount of interaction that I have with him, but his girlfriend does not know anything about it, so I try to be nice to her because she is always nice to me. She seems to be a pleasant person who knows about what's going on behind the scenes, and I kind of pity her and I wanted to tell her everything that's going on. But then I thought that it was not my place to say anything, so I refrained from doing any of that. Anyway, 3 days ago, I came back home early from work since I was feeling kind of under the weather, and my dad was not at home at the time. I knew that because when I pulled up, I did not see my dad's car parked, and I knew that he was not around. As I was inside my house, I could hear something going on in my room, and I found it really confusing because while I was away, I thought it was common sense that nobody was supposed to go into my bedroom. When I went in, I saw that my dad's girlfriend was sitting with her back to me and going through my closet. I could tell that she was searching for something, and she had headphones on, so she probably did not see me coming. So I walked up to her and tapped her on the shoulder, and then she turned around. She seemed really surprised to see me and bolted away from the closet like it was on fire. When I asked her what was going on, she told me that she was just looking for some clothes because hers were all dirty right now. First of all, that was an obvious lie because I knew for a fact that she had brought enough clothes along with her, and only a couple of them were in the laundry right now. Secondly, even if she did need clothes, it would be quite foolish to look for clothes in my closet since I was much bigger than her and they would not fit her properly. So once again, I asked her what was going on, and I kept pushing until she finally told me the truth. She confessed to me that my dad had put her up to this and told her to start looking for any documents related to the house. He would need it. When I asked her if he had mentioned anything about why, she told me that he hadn't said anything about it, but right now he was with a lawyer and that's all that she knew. It was quite easy for me to put 2 and 2 together. He was probably planning to do something with the deed and screw me out of the house or something like that, because otherwise he had no reason to be looking for house-related documents and then speaking to a lawyer. I was really pissed off, so I decided to do what I had been planning to do anyway, and I told my dad's girlfriend the truth about him and mentioned how he had nothing and nobody anymore, which is why he was still with me, and even I was going to kick him out now that I had found out the truth that he was planning to screw me out of having the house. I did not know how he was planning on doing that, but I was sure that it was something shady and illegal. I was not going to let that fly, so I told her the truth, and she was scandalized. She immediately packed her things up, said thanks to me, and then left the house. A couple of hours later, I was still seething when my dad came back home. I let him look for his girlfriend all over the house, and then when he finally came to me to ask about what happened, I told him that I had found her searching through my closet and he got really nervous. He told me that he had not asked her to do that, but I was not going to believe a word of what he had said. I told him that I had told the truth about whatever he had said to me, assuming that she hadn't already known, and I was sure she had known nothing about him, and when she found out, she left immediately. So now he was not only out of a girlfriend, but he was also out of a place to live because I was kicking him out. He started howling like a banshee the second that I told him that his girlfriend was gone and told me that I had no right to do that to him because that was not my place to say anything. He told me that he was going to tell his girlfriend anyway in a couple of days, but it had to come from him so it would be honest at the very least. He told me that he was looking for business opportunities and that's why he had gone out, not to plan anything shady with his lawyer, and he said that it was insulting that I would even think of it that way, and that he had not told his girlfriend to look for the deed, and it must have been a misunderstanding. But I did not believe that, not even one bit, since his girlfriend had no reason to lie to me, and I knew that he was lying. So we got into a huge fight, and it ended with him walking out of the house and telling me that I would pay for this because I had ruined the only relationship in his life that meant something to him. For the past 3 days, I've been thinking about it, and now I feel kind of guilty about what happened because just in case he was telling the truth, I ruined his life for no reason. I know that he has had his fair share of mistakes, and he has not treated me correctly in the past, but that does not mean that I have to stoop down to his level and behave the same way that he did. I don't know, I just feel really lost right now. I have mixed emotions about all of this, and I just really want to know if what I did was actually messed up or was the right thing to do. Am I the a-hole for telling my father's girlfriend the truth about him and driving her away from him? Update 1. Hello. First of all, thank you guys so much for responding to my post and all the kind words that people had to say. I would also like to acknowledge the comments that called me stupid and stuff. I agree with you guys, it was a huge mistake on my part. I should not have thought that my father would change, and I definitely shouldn't have given him a second chance. Even after I found out that he had been lying to me the entire time, I should have realized that he was a slimy and terrible human being and cut ties with him the second that I found out what he was like. In fact, I never should have allowed him to come back into my life in the first place. He did me a huge favor by cutting me out of his life all those years ago, and I should have stuck to it, but I really am a soft person at heart, and I can't bring myself to treat people the same way that they have treated me, and I don't know. I guess you could say that it's my one weakness. I did mention that I was kind of gullible when it came to people who were valuable in my life at some point, and he happened to be one of them. But I have learned my lesson now, and I'm not going to let this happen again. So thank you guys for opening my eyes to see the truth. Anyway, I already blocked my father the day that he left the house, and since then he did not try to get back in touch with me, not until I made that post anyway. 3 days had gone without any contact, and I thought that after that he would not try to get back in touch with me again. But I was wrong. Now almost a week has passed since he left, and he just sent me a legal notice. Apparently, he is suing me for defamation, and his grounds for that are that apparently I spoke to his business associates earlier while his business was still trying to take off and told them that he had abandoned me, and that's why he did not succeed in his business venture since his associates and investors started abandoning him and backing out one by one because of what I had said. And now I had done the same thing with his girlfriend, and he wanted to sue me for that. It was hilarious that he was even trying to do this because it was not true, and everybody knows it. I don't even know how he managed to convince his lawyer to file such a dumb case. It's going to be thrown out of court when I'm able to prove quite easily that I never had any contact with any of his business associates because I never even knew these people. I still don't know these people because I have had no contact with them for the past 10 years. And it will be very easy for me to prove that. In fact, even if you ask his business associates, they will probably testify against him, and he was going to lose this, so I'm not worried about what was going to happen. But I just feel annoyed that he's even trying to do this. He can just let this go and treat this incident like it never happened, but I guess he likes creating drama out of nothing and then pretending to be the victim. That's his go-to move, I'm guessing. Anyway, I have already responded to that with my lawyer, and if he wins this case, he gets the amount of money. But if he loses, he has to pay me twice the amount because I'm suing him back for causing me emotional distress, and unlike him, at least I can prove it. As a child, he literally straight up abandoned me, and I can prove it because I know that my aunt will always stand up for me no matter what. I know that for a fact, so I have more people on my side than he will ever have. Update 2. So it has been 1 week and 3 days since my last update, and guess what? My father has decided to retract his lawsuit against me because he probably realized that he was never going to win this. And if he lost, he was going to have to pay me twice the amount that he has been demanding from me, so it was probably in his best interest to back out and save face while he still had a chance to do so. We have not had any conversations directly, but I know that he is still trying to make me feel bad and try to scare me since I keep getting messages from fake profiles on social media, and they are really nasty. They have a lot of mean things to say about me, and I know for a fact that it's probably my father since I don't think anybody else would stoop to this level and try to go out of their way to harass me online. I have thought about responding to one of his messages and telling him that if he doesn't stop this soon, he might also have a lawsuit on his hands for this. I have also retracted my lawsuit for emotional distress since I don't want to get into that and cause myself so much trouble, since emotional distress is very vague grounds and I don't know if the court will even entertain that, so I don't even need to do anything because I don't need the money and I was just doing it as a way to get back at him. But if he doesn't stop sending me these messages, I might actually file a lawsuit against him or at least a restraining order. I think I might go with the latter since that's going to take less time and honestly save me a lot of trouble. I don't think it will take me much to prove that those messages have been sent to me by my father. Update 3. Hi, so almost a month has passed since my last update, and just to tell you guys, I now have a restraining order against my father. He made the job much easier for me because a couple of days after that update, I was just chilling at home on the weekend, and he showed up really late at night and caused a scene in front of my house. He legitimately threw a wine bottle at my door, and it shattered, which woke up all my neighbors, and there was a whole thing about it. We had to call the cops and have him arrested. Luckily, he was let off with just a slap on the wrist, but after that, I decided that I was not going to tolerate this BS, and I decided to file for a restraining order against him, and of course, after what he had done, I was able to get that against him quite easily. So now I don't think he'll be showing up at my place anymore, and even if he does, he's going to have to pay the price for it. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I worked extremely hard for 2 years to secure our future while my boyfriend secretly sold my grandparents' inheritance to fuel his drug habit. Now I'm losing my toxic family and BFF. My 33F BF 34M and I have been together for over 12 years now. I first met him in high school and we were friends for a few years. We lost touch after he graduated but ended up reconnecting when I was in college. We've been together since. About 7 years ago, we were at a crossroads. His friend had passed away suddenly in an accident, and he proceeded to spiral. He started trying drugs, staying out all night, engaging in very reckless behavior, and it truly scared me. I tried everything to pull him out of it. It took a lot of work and me almost leaving for him to start putting his life back together. A little backstory. I work for my family's business. I have worked for the family business since I was 18 years old. And honestly, it would be great if I didn't have to work with the same people I see on the holidays. My family can be, in a word, toxic. There is a lot of infighting and drama. Working with them is similar to our personal lives. Stressful, chaotic. When my grandmother passed away about 3 years ago, I was willed some liquid assets that had belonged to her and my grandfather, gems, jewelry, precious metals, cash, etc., and their house they had had since the 60s. And honestly, this was a blessing. With that inheritance, I finally felt like I could pull free from my family and get out of the family business and take time to go back to school and do something I was passionate about. However, I had no savings at the time and wanted to get a decent amount saved before I quit. At this time, an opportunity opened up at work. The pay was way higher but required 4 to 7 months of travel time a year. I talked it over with my BF, and we decided that we only needed 2 years to save up what we needed. I took the job and prepared to leave for 2 months for training at the main branch. About a month into my training, my BF suddenly quit his job with no explanation other than, "I had to. I can't work there anymore." I was concerned about our financial goals because of this, but he swore up and down that he would get a new one shortly and that he wouldn't need any help with his personal bills. Well, a year went by and he had only taken up gig work and temp jobs. I wasn't happy as I was having to travel all the time and was having to be really frugal in order to get all our joint bills paid while also putting money into savings. He was managing to pay his own bills, so I let it slide since he tossed in what he could to the joint pile as well. Now I'm sitting here about to complete my 2 years, and my BF has decided to come clean to me. For the past 2 years, while I've been working a job that has been soul-crushing and has had me away from home for weeks to months at a time, I've missed birthdays, weddings, friends' baby showers, etc. I've sacrificed the last 2 years of my life to make enough to be able to live my life the way I want to. And he tells me last week that he has been paying his personal bills by selling the things my grandparents had willed me that I had left in a safe that was hidden in the house. A safe he only had access to because the hunting rifle is in there, and I thought, he wouldn't do that to me. I'm honestly in shock. It was a substantial amount, and it makes me nauseous to even try to quantify it right now. I've already set in motion quitting my job and have given notice, and now I have so much less than I thought I did. He only told me because he had figured a way to pay me back and had gotten a stable job and was planning on using most of his paycheck to give to me until I was made whole. But this just honestly disgusts me. I feel so violated. More than that, I wonder if this is going to be a pattern now. Life is stressful, a lot of change is happening, and he just self-destructs. After what he put me through 7 years ago, I don't know if I can look past this. Yes, he came clean to me, but I just can't seem to get past this feeling. I look at him and just feel nothing right now. It's breaking my heart because I really care for him, and yet I just can't see anything changing. I feel so conflicted. We have been together so long and even have all the same friends and share a life together. Will we be able to come back from this? Or is this what falling out of love feels like? Comments. Comment 1. I honestly don't know how you didn't get violent because I would. I would genuinely prefer cheating than this, and he only came clean because he was out of time. You need to call the police, or if you don't want to go straight there, you need to have him buy every single thing back. Otherwise you call. You also need to sue his ass. This is insane. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. The one person you should be able to trust stabbing you over and over in the back because you weren't around to stop him. Please take your time healing. This is a massive betrayal. Who takes from the dead, from their partner? And who's to say he didn't use any of it on drugs? 'Cause this is drug behavior, and don't you ever go back. Don't even consider reconciliation. OP. He decided to tell me on the phone while I was away for work. I just got home last night and saw the damages firsthand. I gave my notice for work, which involved getting into it with my family, so now I feel like I'm losing my family and my relationship. Comment 2. I want you to note that this scenario is ostensibly the same as 7 years ago. At that time, due to stress, he spiraled, became selfish and self-destructive. It was only by your good grace and support that it worked out, you forgiving him for the time he wasted and the pain you put you through. Well, this time he was more subtle about it. He quit his job with no planning or realistic goals, and that's either a sign of a breakdown or that he messed up severely. I assumed the reveal was going to be he cheated and began stealing from you to maintain that spiral. It was the same 7 years ago. This time it was just behind your back. He can't pay you back. The money he earns and gives to you is just coming from your joint resources. It is still costing you. You can't get these last 2 years back. 2 years of subsidizing him spiraling without even knowing it. That money has gone so long as you share money, and that was the entire point of this exercise. Still, you also humored this for 2 years, let alone what happened 7 years ago. I get you care about this guy, but this really is, get real about your lifetime. This really is a question of how many more times you go through this cycle. I worry that your life stuck with a toxic family has increased your resilience in a counterproductive way. It has led you to put up with his because in some senses he is less awful than they are. Update. May 23, 2024. First, I would like to thank everyone who commented on my original post. As hard as it was, I read every one of them. Honestly, I did not expect so many people to be angry on my behalf, and I am truly touched. In my life, I have learned that the best way to answer others' sincerity is by being sincere myself, so I'd like to try here. I have a very small circle of people. I would say the 2 most important people to me in the past 15 years have been my BF and my little sister. The only 2 people I talk to nearly every day and do most of my everyday life with. A little over a year ago, I almost lost my little sister when she overdosed on prescription medicine and attempted to self-exit. I was the one who found her after the fact and spent the next 3 weeks by her side in the ICU. The whole ordeal could be its own post, really. Now, the person that had been my best friend for my whole life has me blocked in every aspect of her life for reasons I still do not know, and I still wonder if she blames me for leaving that night as much as I blame myself. In my grief, I lashed out at my toxic family for not listening to me when I said I was concerned about her, for not doing more, for not even being at the hospital when she needed them, for expecting me to be the one to attend to her while she was in rehab. And because I lashed out at them, I was ostracized. The only time my family talks to me now is if it has to do with work. My birthday came and went without a single one of them reaching out. It is why I was compelled to quit, as the silence and isolation was slowly driving me into a depression. During all of this, I had been clinging to my BF. It would have been too difficult to go through without him, and I guess is the main reason why I didn't immediately kick him out when he came clean. I have lost my best friend and any support from family. When I gave my notice, only one person asked me to reconsider. The rest said good riddance. And even if my family is toxic and awful to each other, it still hurts to be cast out so thoroughly. So when my BF came clean to me, I just went numb. It felt like I lost what little fight I had left in me. It feels like the fabric of my life is coming unwoven, and I am falling apart. I am still deeply mourning the loss of my sister in my life and grieving a family I've given up on. I have lost a lot in the past year, and this is just the last thing I thought I had to worry about. As many of you stated, it sounded like drugs. I didn't get him to divulge exactly what he was doing with the money, but I pieced enough together. Addiction has once again taken him. My BF is a sweet, doting, and genuinely funny person, but 7 years ago, he also became someone I didn't know. His drug addiction was deep and unrelenting. It was a monumental uphill battle for him to get clean and stay sober, but I told him I would only stick it through with him once, and if he ever started back down that road, I would leave. So, I guess he got smart about hiding it, and me being gone 6-ish months out of the year really helped him with that. I know some of you were very upset for me losing sentimental items, but my grandma's jewelry is all there. He sold my grandpa's collection of, let's say, precious metals. As my grandpa was a child of the Depression and never had faith in banks, he stored most of his assets as such. All his kids and grandkids were given portions of that. They weren't sentimental as much as a safety net I had every intention of using if needed. There was a comment that was a few paragraphs that kind of left me shaken. My denial was pointed out, but also the fact that I already knew what I needed to do. But I was looking for any way, any reason, any logic, something to not have to lose anything or anyone else right now. But I can't escape reality as much as I may try. Some of you asked how I could even contemplate staying. The easy answer. I'm still scared. Scared to face this world alone. Terrified, really. I have told him we have no more future together, and we are working on how to best separate. It is amicable. I will not be reporting him or suing him. I have talked to his mom and dad about it, and they have told me I will be made whole one way or the other, and he has promised as such. I know a lot of you will be disappointed in that outcome, but I just have nothing left in me. I'm exhausted. I don't even have the energy to get angry right now. Maybe once I have time to process everything, that might change, but right now I need peace. For now, I can only focus on the present and try to take one day at a time. I didn't ever think I would be this alone. And the pain of losing the people I love the most in this world is a poignant heartache I will be grappling with for a good time to come. Thank you, kind internet strangers, for letting me feel less alone in this. Thank you for your anger on my behalf. Thank you for taking time to read my post and give validity to my heartbreak. Now for some comments. Comment 1. I commented on your last post, but with the additional context provided here, more things click into place, especially the context of your family. I put emphasis on how this was a repeat of the previous cycle, and I want to put emphasis there again. No, we can't move on from him stealing from me. This isn't about the stealing per se. The stealing was a symptom of the broader problem, his drug addiction, and his cycling of it is a problem. It is likely something that will haunt him his entire life, and the reality is that it is not a problem you can help with, especially given you yourself are dealing with a lot of demons. You left because drugs have destroyed his life, and you can't afford to be taken down that path with him for both your sakes. Now, it is clear you have to focus on yourself. Stay on top of your ex's parents to assure you get your money back. But in the meantime, look into ways to enrich your own life. Some of that may involve joining social groups, hobbies, fitness, etc. Your family and your ex are a constant source of drama, and many people find once they do step away, the silence can be a little deafening. So you want to make sure you fill the gaps as quickly as you can. You once again summed it up exactly. Your comment on my last post struck me when you said my resilience had increased in counterproductive ways. I felt a little called out, but what you said was right. I do often question the magnitude of events happening in real time and usually shrug because it's not as awful as it could be. But I've been trying to learn to trust myself. I've been trying to be better than what my family is. You helped me realize I was letting myself down and going back on the work I've been doing if I just once again let the chaos stay in my life. Thank you. Comment 2. I am glad what I said was able to resonate with you. While it struck you personally, I will say that this is the path to recovery all of us with, let's call them, messy backgrounds tend to have to walk. Understanding that our very sense of what is normal is warped took me time to really understand myself, But once you do, you are able to see everything in a new context, and it seems you have started that journey yourself. You can see that you are basically universally supported here, even if the advice you get varies from responder to responder, but I will say the advice that I gave, the reason I focused on the family, was a reflection of the things you raised in your initial post. I think part of you was already on the verge of these breakthroughs. I wish you luck in that journey. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Golden child sister made my life a living hell for eating at a hospital cafeteria. Then had my bike stolen during a family dinner and dumped in a pond. Okay, hear me out. I work just a few blocks away from a hospital and get there pretty quickly by bicycle. Their cafeteria is quaint with good prices, so usually once a week or so, I'll go there for lunch. The food isn't what I would call amazing, but they have nice variety. From time to time, the staff even recognize me and are always pleasant. They don't mind that I'm just there for lunch, and it's far quieter eating there than at any local restaurant. I'm on the spectrum and don't like loud noises, so the quiet lunches in this place are a godsend for me some days. Recently, my sister found out I've been eating at the hospital and went off on me over how hospital cafeterias are only supposed to be there for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. I retorted that I was giving them business and it's not like I was taking food out of the mouths of patients, and I only went once a week, so what was the big deal? But she still insisted I was wrong. Then she got our parents involved, and they're siding with her. They are telling me I should only be eating at the hospital if I had an actual reason to be there. I told them they were all crazy and it was just normal food that I was paying for. But now, because neither they nor I are backing down, I'm torn. Am I wrong for going to eat lunch in a hospital cafeteria once a week just because I work nearby? Edit. Thank you for all the comments. I will make this a hill to sit on if I have to. Now, update 1. I really apologize for the length of this post, but writing down all the details took way longer than I thought, and this situation was downright crazy. I never thought my sister would do something like this. Not too long ago, I, 23M, posted in r/SL for advice because my parents and sister were angry at me for regularly eating in a hospital cafeteria because it's close to my work. I enjoy the peace and quiet there on the days I do show up to eat. But this situation escalated so radically that I can't believe something so dumb actually happened. My sister did the pettiest thing she's ever done to me, and for completely undeserved reasons too. When my sister found out I was eating at the hospital cafeteria, she went off on me over how that food is just for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. We ended up in a big argument about it, in which I told her it wasn't like I was taking food from the mouths of patients. Then she went to our parents to get them on her side, like always, and they immediately sided with her just like I thought they would. They backed her up on how the hospital cafeteria was not a place to go eating casually, and we had a big argument. They spent days hounding me and telling me I was wrong and demanding I stop. So I went to Reddit, and here I learned that not only was I not doing anything wrong, but it's a very common thing for people to go eat at hospital cafeterias just because they like it. I hoped the situation would just fade away, but a few days later, my sister called me asking if I had stopped eating at the hospital. I said no, and then it started all over again. My parents then called me, fuming and acting like I was supposed to stop going because they said so. I reminded them that I don't live under their roof anymore, and this is exactly the kind of reason why I moved out. They take my sister's side in almost everything. They huffed and puffed about it. This time, the fight didn't stay at home though. Other relatives found out because my sister tried to broaden her support. She was so dead set on enforcing her will upon me that she went looking for help from other relatives. But our parents were the only ones on her side. My uncle personally admonished my parents and her over the phone. For once, I told them what actually happened. He told them they were only siding with my sister because she's their favorite and their terrible parents for forever playing favorites to begin with. Then a cousin went to eat with me at that hospital cafeteria and said he'd like to go there once a week too, as he also works nearby and bicycles everywhere. We've run into each other at lunch there once already. Since then, he was actually rather pleased to find out the food was made healthier than most other places. He's a bit of a picky eater, so this place is kind of like his new lunch hangout, and my sister got even angrier after finding out there were other people in the family eating at the hospital now too. Once outed, my parents backed down due to embarrassment. They apologized to me and gave me some malarkey that they honestly thought eating at a hospital was weird and that they felt like they just needed to defend my sister. I told them they'd been spoiling my sister for so long that it's all they do whenever she starts something with anyone. She's been treating me like a condescending control freak and a bully since we were teenagers, even though I'm older, and they just kept enabling that. But I won't put up with it anymore. My parents ended up conceding and apologized. Then they made my sister apologize to me too, and I could tell she hated every second of it because she tried to speak through her teeth at first. Later on, my parents invited me to dinner as another form of apology, but it felt more like a show to look good to the rest of the family because they told everyone about it before it even happened. The dinner was great. I can't deny my parents had cooked a turkey, arguably one of my favorite things to eat. I love the drumsticks slathered with gravy. Yeah, I'm kind of a pig when I eat them, but I can't help it. My sister always thought it hilarious and was one of the few things I didn't mind her laughing about, so I thought nothing of why she was so giggly at dinner. Later, after the family dinner, I noticed that my bike was missing. I parked it in the backyard out of sight, but it was just gone. I freaked out because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents did panic a bit with me, but my sister seemed just the opposite. She actually looked happy and was still giggling. I immediately suspected her, and she played innocent. She even gave the, "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that" line. I already knew she's extremely petty, but this was a whole new level of it for her. So I said that I was going to go over to the neighbor because I know they have cameras and they'd have seen what happened, and then I'd call the cops. My sister suddenly looked panicked, and I got mad and said I knew it was her and demanded my bike back. She started crying and saying she didn't do anything, and our parents were immediately taking her side while scolding me for daring to accuse her. So I had enough and said I was going to the neighbors to ask to check their cameras and then I'd be calling police. My sister finally fessed up and called me to come back. The looks on our parents' faces after they just defended her were priceless. My sister said she was just so angry at me for having made her apologize for something she still believed she was right about, so she planned to have a couple of her friends come and grab my bike during dinner. She said her friends were in a minivan with it just down the street. She then started saying that I couldn't call police on her anyway because I'm her big brother. Our parents backed that up too, but I pulled out my phone and started marching outside again. They ran after me with my sister begging and crying for me to stop. I called her a brat, and then I told my parents I couldn't believe they were still defending her when she was acting this way. Our parents finally hit their enabling limit with her and told her to make her friends bring my bike back immediately. She got on her phone while sniffling and called her friends up, but then she suddenly ran into her room to talk to them. I couldn't hear a thing she said through the door because it was all in whispers, and our parents looked very worried too. My sister would never have willingly admitted she had my bike stolen. She just kept sobbing that it was only a prank over and over again, and she also kept using the excuse that it's just a cheap bike anyway. I bought it used some months ago for $50, but it's in great shape and it's my main mode of transportation. My sister kept looking at our parents to back her up, and that time they just couldn't, so she just slumped down in a chair hugging her knees and waiting with the rest of us. My sister looked increasingly freaked out the longer her friends took to bring my bike back and was repeatedly texting them. Even though my sister said her friends were just down the street, it took them roughly an hour to bring my bike back. They finally pulled up in the minivan with my bike shoved in the back, and it was completely soaked and all muddy like it had just been pulled out of a wet muddy ditch. The bike is a 700C, so it's too tall for either of them to ride. So they just drove right up and stole the bike by dragging it into the van as fast as they could before taking off. I say they stole it because I was almost certain in the moment my sister had told them to dispose of my bike. Had I not pointed out the neighbor's cameras, I may not have gotten it back. When her friends did finally arrive, their legs were all muddy and wet nearly up to their knees. They both begged me not to report them to police for taking the bike. I asked, while recording them, to tell me the truth and pointed out the neighbor's cameras. Did my sister want them to get rid of my bike? They broke down and said yes, my sister wanted them to take the bike and dump it in a pond a few miles away, and they had to go back and get it when they realized they were caught. My bike had been near completely submerged in muddy water. Thankfully, I didn't have many added accessories on it other than a detachable headlight and my water bottle, but the water bottle was missing. I wasn't surprised by what my sister's friends told me, and I had them tell our parents too. They laid into my sister till she was bawling on the floor, kicking and pounding like a toddler. I had never seen my sister act that way since she actually was a toddler, and I found it mortifying she was still like this on the inside. Then she shut herself in her room. Her friends were banned from ever coming to my parents' house again. Then my sister was forced to come out of her room by our mother and make another big apology to me. Our father then forced her to wash and oil my bike from stem to stern under his supervision while I took apart the headlight and cleaned it out to dry it. By the time my sister was done, it was dark outside. She glared at me like I was the devil when she came back in the house. But our parents shut her attitude right down and said they've never been more embarrassed by her in their lives. She went back to crying in her room. I had a very frank discussion with my parents about my sister's childlike behavior and how it stemmed from their spoiling and enabling. I said I couldn't believe I had to be the voice of reason, but the fact that she was on the floor crying like a toddler, kicking and pounding, showed that she's still mentally a child because of them. And they kept making me the scapegoat when she screwed up, so she barely knows any sense of accountability. For once, they didn't argue with me about it, and then my father silently drove me and my bike back to my apartment with his SUV. He also gave me some money to replace my bike's missing water bottle before we parted. My sister and her clique used to harass me a fair bit whenever we ran into each other. They made fun of me as a group whenever possible, and I usually just ignored them because they bored me, and that really seemed to tick them off. But after the bike incident, I got sent numerous messages from numbers I didn't know, cussing me out for making my sister cry over a silly prank. Knowing her, my sister probably fed everyone she knew a very different story on what happened. I texted lengthy replies of what actually happened and even stated I have recordings of her friends admitting the truth. Some people at my sister's college found out what actually went down. Maybe from my texts, maybe her friends spilled the beans, but it embarrassed my sister so much she came home having a crying tantrum about how people were calling her and her friends bees and bike thieves. I may not have gone to college, but I know students who need them are very protective of their bikes. A lot of them live on shoestring budgets after all. My sister said someone even joked that they shouldn't leave a bike around her because it might just disappear if she had to apologize to anyone. My sister ended up so upset that she refused to leave her room for 3 days to have her pity party. My parents called me up to try and turn everything on me again. I reminded them about the discussion we had days before and that they needed to stop babying her and let her deal with the repercussions of her own actions. If she fails her classes again, it's because she's not trying like she should be. Then I went off on them, how they're just looking for someone to blame to make her feel better. She made the problem, not me, and I wasn't going to be the one they make the scapegoat anymore. My sister is an adult and she needs to act like it. They sounded defeated and then apologized before ending the call. Looks like they were genuinely hoping I'd just sit back and take the blame so my sister would get better. But I never will again. Now my parents are trying to pretend this all never happened, and my sister as well as her clique are avoiding me at all costs, which I suppose is fine with me because I don't want any more drama. But the next time something like this happens, I won't take it from them. Update 2. I was just browsing YouTube yesterday when I saw a video about my last post, and I realized I never made a final update, so here it is. To start things off, yes, my bike is fine. I managed to avoid anything on it getting rusty or clogged up after my sister had it dumped in a pond. It already was not new, and there were no new creaks or groans from it. I was worried something on it would go bad. But it's a really simple single-speed bike, so it works just fine after having everything oiled after being submerged in water. I re-greased the crank bearings anyway. I've also changed out the rear tube and tire myself a few months ago, and I still ride practically everywhere. On to my brat of a sister. She barely managed to pass college, and she did try to blame her low grades on me and depression from the bike incident multiple times, but even our parents stopped allowing her to do that. They finally hit their limits and started cracking down on her bad behavior and made her sit in her room and study whenever she had a pity party or tantrum. They threatened to cut off the Wi-Fi and shut off her phone multiple times if she didn't actually get her homework done. She cried and said she hated them, but she sucked it up and finally did as told. She finally managed to graduate, but her graduation was not a very fun time for her. We all went out to celebrate with her, but she was just not happy, and the reason why is because she has no friends anymore and she'd hoped to party with her former clique friends after graduation, but they all cut her off some time ago because she's a brat. As an ironic punishment, our parents started making my sister ride a bicycle to get around. She hated it more than she hates the bus. It's a cruiser bike our dad picked up used for her, and our parents practically begged me to take her out on weekend rides to get her out of the house for a few hours. And I did, but only because they asked nicely and offered dinner. Last we spoke of it, my sister still held firm. She believes it's wrong to eat at the hospital for some reason but couldn't find any valid reason to justify it when asked why by anyone. Literally no one sided with her about it anymore. Even our parents admitted they no longer find it weird after being told the cafeteria is actually a separate business from the hospital. And as another show to the family, they actually went with me to have a family lunch at the hospital a couple of times, and they forced my sister to come along. She looked weirdly fidgety and openly said she couldn't believe they made her eat there when it was against her beliefs. She kind of worded it in a way as like it was against her religion or something and was told off for exactly that. So she just cried like she always did but was told to grow up. I think she was just standing by her so-called beliefs because she'd have to admit she was wrong to herself if she did, and she just wouldn't do that. There have been times I questioned if she's not just a spoiled control freak but a narcissist too, though I'm far from qualified to diagnose anyone. My sister's clique all ended up abandoning her as a friend because being involved with her screwed them over too. Since at least 2 of them shared in her plan to steal my bike and dump it, they all got hazed for it when word got out. So the clique blamed my sister for everything and stopped talking to her to save their own reputations. While I didn't file a police report, the 2 girls who stole my bike did get in big trouble with their families, and that minivan they were driving. It turned out it was borrowed from one of their parents, and they stopped allowing its use after finding out what happened. The parents who owned the minivan even visited me to apologize to me on behalf of their daughter and also asked for a copy of the video I took, which I gave. Even though they were fully complicit, the clique put it all on my sister and threw her under the bus to everyone. I guess now my sister knows how it feels to be the scapegoat. She was also laughed at for a while since she was forced to ride a bike to and from college since our parents decided it was cheaper than the bus and my sister no longer had friends to carpool with. And no, her bike was not stolen or vandalized. My sister just hated it. Our dad has also forced her to learn how to fix and maintain the bike herself too. He used to tinker on bikes in his youth and still has the tools around, so he knows enough to do all his own work on bikes even though he no longer rides them himself, and he taught me the basics of working on them too. For those who said that my sister would do something even more crazy or retaliate against me, she did nothing of the sort. She's just bitter. She was made to get counseling and it's improved her slightly, but if it has any real effect, for all I know it'll take years to see a change in her. But she doesn't try to boss me around anymore. I've been called over for dinner by my parents a number of times since my last post, and my sister barely speaks to me at the table and she seemed further annoyed by the fact I was completely unbothered by it too. She's been told by everyone, even our parents to an extent, that she destroyed her own reputation, but she can't seem to stop putting blame on me because she needs a scapegoat. I also chained and locked my bike whenever I visited home from the prank incident onward, just in case. After my sister finished college, my parents suddenly announced that my sister was moving out of their house. She openly did not want to, but they forced her to get a job immediately and made her find an apartment. They said her party days were over and it's time they made her learn about adult life. Multiple relatives told my parents that my sister wouldn't really grow up unless she lives on her own and pays her own bills. My parents deliberated about it for some time because she was obviously their golden child, but my sister would never become an adult so long as they kept things as they were. My sister is still not happy about it at all because she loved being a spoiled leech, but she couldn't blame me for that as I was not involved in this decision in any way, and she knows it. But she had multiple, that was just a bike, tantrums when she was trying to put the blame on me when things weren't going well for her at college. Our mother once smacked her upside the head and told her to stop acting like I was the one causing all her problems and it wasn't just a bike to me. It's borderline my livelihood since it's my primary mode of transportation. Currently, my sister shares a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other girls. She had to be moved further away so her reputation wouldn't follow her when she got a job. My mother really cried over that. My sister is working in an office and learning how to be a secretary, but she moans and groans about hating her current life but also tries to rub it in my face about what she'll do when she makes better money than me. I just told her, "You do you," and she got mad I didn't take the bait. She does not like her roommates and still has to ride the bike our father got her to get around. Her commute isn't far, just a few miles, so she doesn't waste money on the bus, and walking is too slow for her. She wanted, if not practically demanded, our parents to buy her a car since they kicked her out of the house, and they refused to get her one, which made her stop talking to them for a while. I think it's probably pretty obvious my sister and I don't go on bike rides together anymore. That stopped as soon as she moved out. While we were still doing weekend rides together, my sister tried multiple immature digs she could think of at me. I don't even remember most of them because I just ignored her taunts and didn't even act irritated. Then she'd call me dunce, special ed, and would roll her eyes among her repeated immature taunts. One was trying to say things like her bike is better than mine because it actually has gears, but she could never outpace me anyway. It kind of seemed to make her determined to get in better shape. At least I think she just wants me to be the big loser so she doesn't feel like one. My sister obviously wants a car but can't afford one on her own yet because she's not good at saving. She wanted our parents to buy her an e-bike for Christmas, and they refused after seeing how much good ones cost. My sister has already cost them a lot of money anyway since they covered all 3 years of her college. As a bit of a joke, on Christmas, I gave her new tires for her bike, which she gave me the stink eye for. Our parents also had to bail her out financially a couple of times in 2024 because she didn't manage her finances well. At this point, despite how much she's been beat down to the consequences of real life, she still acts like a spoiled brat in denial. But otherwise, she is somehow managing. Though another thing she's used to be angry at me about these days is the fact I live alone and she has to have roommates to afford rent. I've met her roommates too, and they actually seem to really like me, which really upset my sister more. I think the reason she hates all of them so much is because they don't bend to her will like our parents used to. She really hates it when people don't do what she wants, so it must be a nightmare for her to be living with people who don't put up with any of her demands. That about sums up everything till now. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I got into an accident and went blind. While I was blind, my cousin said that my sister and fiancé were having an affair. I had to get surgery to catch them planning to steal my $800,000 insurance settlement. I'm stuck in a situation that feels impossible to handle. At 26, I went from being completely independent to relying on others for basic daily tasks. Being blind means I have to trust what people tell me, but I keep second-guessing everyone's intentions. My parents say one thing, my fiancé says another, and my gut feeling tells me something else entirely. The worst part is not being able to verify anything myself. I need help figuring out who's actually looking out for me and who might be taking advantage of my condition. A few days ago, my cousin Megan told me something that could completely destroy my relationship. She's been my primary caregiver since the accident 6 months ago, helping me with everything from getting dressed to making meals. The accident was brutal. I was driving home from work when a delivery truck ran a red light and slammed into my car. The doctors kept me in the hospital for 3 months, running test after test. My vision got worse each week until everything went completely dark. My family visits often, but Megan is the only one who's been there consistently, day in and day out. This blindness has completely changed who I am. Before the accident, I had a great job, my own apartment, and was planning my wedding. Now I can barely walk around my own home without bumping into furniture. The thing that scares me most is losing Derek, my fiancé. We've been together since college, and while he's got his issues, I've always believed in him. He struggled with keeping jobs throughout his 20s, usually quitting after a few months because he'd get bored or clash with his bosses. His parents always enabled this behavior by paying his bills, which didn't help him grow up. I only agreed to marry Derek after he showed some real progress in his life. He finally landed a steady job at an insurance company and managed to keep it for over a year, which was huge for him. His mom wasn't happy about this. She wanted him to take over their family business, a small convenience store that's been struggling for years, but Derek wanted to prove he could make it on his own. I thought he was finally becoming the responsible person I always knew he could be. My parents weren't convinced though, especially my dad, who wanted me to date his business partner's son instead. I tried breaking up with Derek after my diagnosis became permanent. I figured he wouldn't want to deal with a blind wife, especially since he was just getting his life together, but he completely refused to leave. He kept insisting that he'd spent years becoming a better person for me and wasn't going to give up now. My dad even offered to buy him out of the relationship, a fact I only learned about later from my mom. Derek turned down the money, which honestly surprised everyone since he'd always been motivated by financial gain before. The hospital stay was terrible. I spent weeks feeling sorry for myself, convinced my life was over. I couldn't even check my phone or watch TV to pass the time. The only thing that kept me going was Derek's daily visits. He'd bring me audiobooks, tell me about his day at work, and help me practice using my other senses. The nurses kept telling me how lucky I was to have such a devoted fiancé. My mom was skeptical though. She noticed he only visited during hours when other people were around, never early mornings or late nights when I really needed support. After 3 months in the hospital, my parents wanted me to move to their house in Vermont. They have this huge place with a guest house where I could stay. Derek immediately shot that idea down. He convinced everyone it would be better for my recovery to stay in familiar surroundings. That's when my parents suggested Megan move in with us. She's my mom's sister's daughter and has been a professional caregiver for 10 years. The arrangement worked well at first. Megan handled my medical needs, Derek went to work, and I started learning how to work on things while being blind. I even began working with a specialist who teaches blind people how to use computers. My sister Alice helped with the wedding plans. She's younger than me by 2 years and has always been the more outgoing one. While I was focused on my career, she was the social butterfly who knew everyone. Having her around made things feel more normal. The wedding planning gave me something to focus on besides my disability. Megan kept her distance during these planning sessions. She's very professional about her role as my caregiver, probably because she's been doing this job since she was 18. Her mother got sick when Megan was young, so she learned early how to take care of people. Unlike Alice, who shares all the latest gossip, Megan only speaks when spoken to. One morning, while helping me get dressed, Megan said she needed to tell me something important. This was unusual for her, since she typically keeps conversations focused on my care. She mentioned that in her 10 years as a caregiver, she's worked with over 20 families and developed a sense for spotting relationship problems. Last year, she even helped one of her elderly clients discover that his son was stealing money from his accounts. She said she couldn't keep quiet about what she'd been noticing in my house, especially since we're family. After about 5 minutes of her talking in circles, I asked her to get to the point. That's when she told me that she thought Derek and Alice were having an affair. I made her repeat it twice because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister and my fiancé, the fiancé who turned down my father's money to stick by me after the accident. It seemed impossible. When I pressed her for proof, Megan admitted she didn't have anything concrete. She described how they'd brush against each other unnecessarily when passing in the hallway, or how Derek would touch Alice's lower back when helping her reach things in the kitchen. Apparently, they'd gotten bold enough to do this even when I was in the room, probably thinking my blindness made me completely oblivious. Megan also mentioned hearing them whispering and laughing late at night when they thought everyone was asleep. She reminded me about last week when they both disappeared for 2 hours, claiming they were getting supplies for the wedding. I wanted to completely dismiss what Megan was saying. Derek has his faults. He's terrible with money, still plays video games like a teenager, and can't keep his car clean to save his life. But cheating with my sister? This is the same guy who spent 3 years saving up for my engagement ring when he could have easily asked his parents for money, and the guy who sat through every single doctor's appointment after my accident. Plus, Alice and I have always been incredibly close. We shared everything growing up, from clothes to boyfriend secrets. The idea of them betraying me seems completely insane. Now I can't stop analyzing every interaction between Derek and Alice from the past 4 years. They started getting close during my parents' 25th anniversary party, where Derek helped Alice with her catering business. After that, they'd often grab lunch together when Derek was working near her office. I always thought it was nice that they got along so well, but now I'm wondering if there were signs I missed. Like the time Derek insisted on driving Alice home after my engagement party because she'd had too much to drink, but they didn't get back until 3 hours later. Or how Alice suddenly started showing up at our house most mornings, claiming she wanted to help me get ready for the day. Maybe Megan is wrong about all of this. She's only known them for 6 months, while I've known Alice my whole life. My sister was there when I had my first heartbreak at 16, and she's the one who actually introduced me to Derek at her college graduation party. Plus, Megan comes from a family with a lot of relationship drama. Her own sister lost her husband to her best friend, so maybe she's projecting those experiences onto my situation. But then again, Megan has spent more time around them these past months than I have, considering I'm usually resting or at therapy appointments. Derek and Alice have both sacrificed a lot to help me after the accident. Derek took a pay cut to switch to a job with more flexible hours so he could drive me to appointments. Alice put her catering business on hold to spend more time helping with my recovery. These don't seem like the actions of people who would betray me. Still, I can't ignore how Derek's behavior has changed lately. He doesn't hold my hand as much, and when he kisses me, it feels rushed. I initially blamed it on him being tired from taking care of me, but maybe there's more to it. The thought of confronting them makes me physically ill. I'm totally dependent on them right now. Derek handles all our finances, and Alice manages my medical appointments when Megan isn't around. My parents live 3 hours away, and my closest friends moved to different states after college. Being blind is isolating enough without pushing away the two people I rely on most. Plus, our families are so intertwined now. Derek's mom already bought her mother of the groom dress, and Alice is handling all the wedding vendors through her catering connections. I've posted about my situation on a support forum for visually impaired people, hoping someone there might have dealt with something similar. Update 1 2 weeks later. It's been 2 weeks since I last posted and updated. Sorry for any typos. I'm using a text-to-speech program to write these posts, but it's not perfect. My friend Samuel from my support group recommended a proofreader who specializes in helping blind clients, so my posts should be clearer now. The proofreader also happens to be friends with my eye doctor, which became relevant later. These past weeks have been a nightmare of paranoia and confusion. Every interaction between Derek and Alice feels suspicious now. Last Tuesday, I heard them laughing in the kitchen, but they went completely silent when I walked in. Yesterday, Derek took 20 minutes to answer when I asked about his workday, and Alice changed the subject entirely. They used to be so quick with their responses before the accident. Now everything feels calculated, like they're checking with each other before speaking. When I mentioned this, Derek said I was being paranoid and that they're just being more thoughtful with their words since my accident. This explanation might make sense if they didn't speak normally when they think I'm sleeping. Megan has been my eyes in this situation, literally and figuratively. She's watching them whenever she can, but it's tricky since she has to help me with basically everything. She takes me to physical therapy 3 times a week, helps me shower, and assists with my exercises. The only time she's not with me is when I'm sleeping or when Derek insists on helping me instead. She said she caught them having a heated whispered argument in the garage last week, but they claimed they were discussing wedding centerpieces. The weird part is that we already finalized the centerpiece design last month. During my last checkup, my doctor mentioned something interesting. The damage to my eyes isn't as permanent as they initially thought. There's a surgical procedure that could restore about 75% of my vision, but it's extremely risky. I could end up with severe complications, possibly affecting my entire nervous system. The surgery would involve multiple procedures over several weeks, with a 40% chance of success. He left the decision up to me, but Megan thinks this might be my chance to regain my vision. When my doctor first mentioned the surgery option, I immediately said no. I'd spent 3 months in the hospital after the accident, dealing with countless tests and procedures, the constant beeping of machines, the endless rounds of medications, and the rotating shifts of nurses had driven me almost crazy. My hospital room became my entire world. I couldn't even go to the bathroom without assistance. My hair started falling out from stress, and I developed anxiety attacks whenever I heard medical equipment rolling down the hallway. The thought of going through all that again with only a 40% chance of success seemed insane. But lately, Megan's been showing me testimonials from patients who've had similar procedures. We've been researching everything: the surgeon's background, possible complications, recovery time, and even insurance coverage. The surgery would cost nearly $200,000, but my accident insurance would cover 80% of it. Derek's been pushing me to save that insurance money for our future house, which feels odd since he used to encourage me to try every possible treatment. My older brother, who's a pharmacist, looked into the medication regime I'd need and says it's actually less intense than my previous treatments. The idea of surprising Derek at our wedding by being able to see him at the altar keeps playing in my head. But Megan's more focused on using this as a way to confirm her suspicions about him and Alice. The surgery would require at least 6 weeks of recovery, which means I'd be back home about 3 weeks before the wedding. That's assuming everything goes perfectly and there are no complications. I feel kind of guilty about potentially using a medical procedure as a trap. What if I go through all this trauma and pain only to find out I was wrong about everything? My therapist says I need to be sure about my motivations. Am I doing this for myself or just to catch them? Please, can you guys give me advice on what I should do going forward? Update 3 months later. 3 months have passed and I went through with the surgery. After weeks of research and conversations with former patients, I decided to take the risk. The preparation was intense. I had to stop certain medications, go through multiple pre-surgery screenings, and even had to gain some weight because the doctor said recovery would be easier if I wasn't underweight. I spent 5 days in pre-op procedures before they could even start the main surgery. I told everyone I was attending a specialized Braille learning program in Boston. Derek and Alice immediately suggested that Megan should go back to her family during this time to save money. According to them, paying her full salary while I was away made no sense. I tried arguing that she could help maintain the house, but they were persistent. They even called my parents to back them up, claiming Megan deserved a break. My mom agreed, saying it would give Derek and Alice time to finalize wedding preparations. The whole situation felt convenient for them, but I couldn't say anything without revealing my real plans. Megan found an apartment near the hospital where I had my surgery. She split her time between visiting me and picking up shifts at a local nursing home to cover her expenses. The surgery itself went better than expected, but recovery was brutal. I spent 4 weeks dealing with severe headaches and light sensitivity. The doctors had to keep adjusting my medication because my body kept rejecting the initial prescriptions. Through it all, Megan was there, helping me practice eye exercises and reading me updates from my medical charts. During those hospital nights, Megan told me about her childhood. While I was getting piano lessons and going to summer camps, she was working at a diner at age 14 to help pay her mom's medical bills. Her father left when she was young, and her mother developed MS soon after. She never got to finish college because she had to work full-time as a caregiver. Meanwhile, my biggest concern in my early 20s was whether to accept my dad's offer to work at his firm or pursue my own career path. My privilege became pretty obvious during these conversations. The month in the hospital changed my perspective completely. Before the accident, my life revolved around wedding planning and trying to turn Derek into husband material. I had this perfect vision of our future. A house in the suburbs, 2 kids, and weekend barbecues with friends. Now I was lying in a hospital bed, terrified about what I might discover when I could see again. I started thinking about what I actually wanted from life. Maybe I could use my insurance money to start my own business instead of saving it for a house with Derek. I could travel, go back to school. The accident forced me to see that I've been living someone else's version of a perfect life. Update 3, 1 month later. It's been a month since my last update, and the surgery was successful. I now have 75% of my vision back. The doctors say this is better than they expected. Colors are still a bit blurry, and I need special glasses for light sensitivity, but it's incredible compared to complete darkness. Back at home, I've been pretending I'm still blind. The glasses help sell the story, since I need to wear them anyway. Megan moved back in, and we've fallen back into our old routine, except now I can actually see what's happening around me. These past few weeks have been emotionally exhausting. There have been at least 10 times when I wanted to scream out that I could see everything. Like when Derek canceled our weekly date night, claiming he had to work late, but I saw him drive off with Alice instead. Or when they spent 3 hours organizing wedding favors in the basement while I was supposedly napping. I kept quiet because I needed to understand the full extent of their betrayal. More than that, I needed to know why Derek was still going through with the wedding. Was it guilt? Pity? Or maybe it had something to do with my insurance settlement coming up next month. Yesterday, I finally got the proof I needed, though I wish I hadn't. I was sitting in the living room while they were in the kitchen, supposedly discussing the wedding menu. Through the reflection in our glass cabinet, I watched their entire interaction. Alice was leaning against the counter while Derek made coffee. They were speaking in whispers. Then she kissed his cheek. Instead of pulling away, he turned and kissed her on the lips. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. 4 years of trust and love destroyed in 10 seconds. The worst part was watching them straighten their clothes and act normal when they came back to the living room, asking if I wanted coffee. After witnessing that, I called Megan, pretending I needed help with a wedding errand. When Derek and Alice asked what was wrong, I made up a story about needing to buy something from the bridal shop. The way they looked at each other when I mentioned the wedding, like they were sharing some secret joke at my expense, made me want to throw up. Instead, I smiled and talked about how excited I was to move forward with the wedding plans. Derek actually had the nerve to reach over and squeeze my hand, saying he couldn't wait to marry me. Derek's reaction to pushing forward with the wedding plans made everything click. Instead of looking trapped or guilty, he seemed almost eager. He and Alice shared this knowing look, and he actually grinned. That's when I remembered the conversation with my insurance agent last month. There's an $800,000 payout coming at the end of the year, mainly to cover future medical expenses and lost wages from my job. If we're married when that payment comes through, Derek would have legal access to those funds. The timing of the wedding suddenly made perfect sense. It's scheduled exactly 8 weeks before the final insurance settlement. The accident payout has been coming in smaller amounts until now. $5,000 here, $10,000 there for medical bills and rehabilitation, but the big payment was always scheduled for December. Derek's been unusually interested in my insurance paperwork lately, always offering to handle calls with the agents. He even suggested I switch to his cousin's law firm for handling the settlement, which I now realize would have given him even more control over the money. Last week, I overheard him on the phone with a real estate agent about a beachfront property, something we definitely couldn't afford on his salary alone. His behavior since the accident makes so much more sense now. He stopped holding my hand during movies, no more surprise hugs from behind, none of those little affectionate gestures he used to do all the time. He claims it's because he's afraid of hurting me, but I've seen how gentle he can be with Alice. Just yesterday, he helped her try on her bridesmaid dress. Meanwhile, he won't even sit next to me on the couch anymore. I checked our joint account statement. He's been taking Alice to expensive restaurants while telling me he's working late. I've decided to throw a pre-wedding party next week. I already sent out invitations to everyone. Derek's entire family, all our college friends, my coworkers, even his boss, who he hates. Alice is helping plan it, thinking it's just another bridal shower. She even convinced our parents to fly in early for it. The venue is booked, the catering is ordered, not through her company, which raised some eyebrows, and I've prepared a very special slideshow for the occasion. Megan's been helping me gather evidence. Photos, bank statements, text messages she managed to screenshot from Derek's phone when he left it charging. They think they're so clever, but they have no idea what's coming. Update 4 days later. The wedding is officially canceled. Last night, I ended my engagement in front of 60 guests at what was supposed to be our pre-wedding celebration. Everyone was there. Derek's family, my college roommates, our colleagues, even my old neighbors. The party started normally enough. People were drinking champagne, eating appetizers, congratulating us on the upcoming wedding. Derek's mom kept showing everyone photos of the beach house she wanted us to buy near them. Alice was playing the perfect maid of honor, making sure everyone's glasses stayed full. I waited until everyone had finished dinner before making my announcement. When I took off my glasses and told everyone I could see, the room exploded with excitement. My mom started crying. Derek's dad was calling it a miracle. But Derek and Alice, they looked like they'd seen a ghost. Derek kept opening and closing his mouth like a goldfish, while Alice suddenly found her shoes extremely interesting. It was the first time in weeks I'd seen them maintain proper distance from each other. Then came the questions about when and how this happened. I explained everything, The risky surgery 3 months ago, the recovery period in Boston, the doctors who gave me a 40% chance of success. Megan, playing her part perfectly, asked why I hadn't saved this for the wedding day. That's when I turned to Derek and Alice and told them this was my wedding gift to them. I started listing specific dates and times. The afternoon they spent in the pool house while I was supposedly at physical therapy, their late-night meeting in his car last week, the kisses they thought no one could see. With each detail, Alice's face got paler and Derek's hands started shaking. When Alice tried to deny it, I described the birthmark on her lower back that Derek had been touching in the kitchen 3 days ago. That shut her up pretty quickly. Derek actually tried to turn this around on me. He stood up in front of everyone and said I was the dishonest one for lying about the surgery. My own father had to hold me back when Derek claimed my trust issues had ruined our relationship. That's when I pulled out the folder Megan had helped me prepare. Inside were printouts of his recent credit card statements showing hotel charges, screenshots of his browsing history looking up divorce lawyers, and a copy of his email to his cousin about accessing my insurance settlement after the wedding. The final insurance payment would be $800,000. Enough for him and Alice to start their new life together. My mom started screaming at him in both English and Korean. His parents looked mortified, especially when I mentioned how they'd helped him check into marriage laws regarding disability benefits. Derek's sister actually started crying, saying she'd caught them together but didn't know how to tell me. Meanwhile, Alice kept trying to approach me, blubbering about how it just happened and how they never meant to hurt me. I told her to save her fake tears for her next catering gig. After 30 minutes of complete mayhem, with people taking sides and others trying to calm everything down, I'd had enough. I told Derek he had 24 hours to get his things out of my house. He tried arguing about his name being on the lease, but I reminded him that my parents had paid every rent check for the past year. My dad's already called his lawyer to handle the paperwork. Alice tried following me as I left, but Megan blocked her path. Last I heard, she's staying at a motel because our parents won't let her come home. I've been in my room since last night, ignoring the dozens of messages flooding my phone. My college friends want to take me on a trip to forget everything. Derek's mom keeps calling to apologize, but right now I just need space. The only person I'm talking to is Megan, who's been bringing me food and helping me sort through what's left of my relationship. The pain comes in waves. 1 minute I'm relieved it's over, the next I'm looking at old photos wondering if they were together even then. But mostly, I feel stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. My mom warned me about Derek's pattern of living off others. First his parents, then me. He hasn't held a steady job since college, always claiming he was finding himself, while I paid our bills. The accident insurance was probably the biggest payday he'd ever seen. At least I found out before signing those marriage papers. Some betrayals you can forgive, but this isn't one of them. Our parents keep pushing for reconciliation, saying family should stick together, but as far as I'm concerned, I only have one family member I can trust now. Megan. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Ex-wife accused our neighbor of assault, but I now think she made it up to hide her cheating. He then later committed suicide. My ex-wife is responsible for a fellow airman's death. I, 29F, have been thinking about making this post for a long time, but I've had no idea how to put it into words or how to get the story out. This is all mostly speculation on my part, as I don't have any actual proof, just a lot of circumstantial stuff. I'm not going to name drop any of the bases I was stationed at or any of the people involved, as I don't exactly want the story getting back to the military or affecting anyone I know personally. I just joined the military back in early 2017. No one in my family has been military, and so I was going into this blind, basically. I went to basic and met my now ex-wife, and yes, I made the stupid decision/mistake a lot of military does in marrying someone I had known for a very short amount of time. We met in basic training, and in hindsight, I was only trying to cling to someone because I was scared of being alone and that far away from home for the first time. Nothing inappropriate ever happened between us during basic. I wasn't willing to mess up my career, but we maintained contact after basic and got married during tech school. This is where I should have taken a sign from the universe because I was set to go to an awesome base in a really cool part of the world. But getting married to her changed my orders to a very small base in the western part of the United States. She arrived at the duty station first, and then I arrived there shortly after, around October. We moved into a cute house and started trying to build a life together. For some context, my ex-wife had experienced some physical abuse during childhood, so she had a lot of triggers and issues I was trying to help her deal with. Nothing ever seemed to improve during our marriage, and maybe I'll sound like an a-hole for this, but as the new relationship, love blinders began to come off, it seemed like she played into her traumas a lot and used them for attention. She would introduce herself to people and almost immediately divulge her past. "Hi, my name is," and this is what happened to me in my childhood. It was like she thought this was the most interesting thing about her. But I digress. We spent a very short time at this base, only about 8 months, during which time she spent a stint of time in a mental health facility. While she was there, I would go to visit, and one day when visiting, these girls ran up to me and told me she had been kissing a random guy in the courtyard. I asked her side, and of course, I let her convince me that they were making it up and had a skewed view of what had actually happened. I should have listened to them and trusted my gut. When she finally got back from the facility, she had made a friend while there that was stationed at the same base as us. She had time off work to reacclimate, and so did he. This is a different guy from the one she had been supposedly kissing in the courtyard, by the way. They started spending a lot of time together. One day, she came to pick me up from work, and they were together in her car. When she pulled up, he was in the front seat, and she told me to get in the back. I thought it was weird since we were married, but I let it slide and just got in. They proceeded to basically ignore me and talk to each other. I had a really bad gut feeling that she was cheating on me with him, but I had no real proof besides the feeling and their weird behavior, so I let it go and tried to ignore the feeling. It's been some years now, so I don't really remember why they stopped hanging out, but their hangouts eventually became less frequent and then stopped altogether. I'm going to skip forward a little to the day of the biggest incident. I was at work on a Friday evening. I was an MP. I was posted at a gate, and over the radio, I heard them ask one of my flight members to drive down the road I live on because a neighbor reported seeing a man peeping in windows. The person they asked to go check it out was one of my friends, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about him here, but he was hesitant to do his job a lot. I think he loved his job, but it made him nervous, so I believe he did drive down my street, but I don't think he did much of a check, to be honest. I also texted my wife after hearing that to make sure she was okay, and I don't think I heard back from her for a while. I didn't think anything of that because she was usually painting or watching one of her TV shows or something of that nature, and I was also preoccupied because I was at work. But he comes back across the radio and says he didn't see anything suspicious, and that situation ended for the evening. A couple of days later, I was back at work again when my wife texted me, and she told me that she had to tell me something. She asked me not to tell anyone, and she proceeded to tell me that the neighbor had assaulted her on Friday. My head started spinning, and I told her she shouldn't ask me not to say anything because it was literally in my job description to be a mandatory reporter. When I said that to her, she freaked out and drove to the building where I work, got out of her car, and dramatically collapsed on the stairs in front of the building crying and basically shouted what had happened to her. The next few hours were full of interviews, statements, reports, talking to higher command, and being told we could move to a new base. My head was still spinning. I had never even been around a situation like this, and so I had no idea what to do except try to be there for her. A day or so later, I finally got the whole story from her. She said the neighbor had come over and come in through the garage. She asked him what he was doing there, and he replied with, "You look tense. Let me rub your shoulders." And she didn't question that. She just accepted his offer. After a minute, he said it would be easier if she took her shirt off, so she did, and then he suggested it would be easier if she was laying down, so they moved into the guest room on the bed, and that's where she said he flipped her over and ejaculated on her chest. Believe me, I know how unbelievable this all sounds now. At the time, I don't know why I didn't see any of the red flags in this story. Skipping forward a bit, they moved us to a new base closer to my family, as she didn't want to move closer to her family because she wasn't close with her. Moving there is when our marriage really started to deteriorate. The new squadron I was assigned to was horrible with corrupt leadership, so work life was awful, and I tried to be patient with my wife. I come home from work and clean the house and try to take care of everything so she didn't have to worry with any of it. She ended up in a mental facility 2 more times, but overall she never seemed to improve. My life turned into being extremely unhappy at work and coming home to a constantly trashed house, so I spent all of my time either working or cleaning. I was in a borderline suicidal state for a long time because of how all of this was affecting my mental health. I'm going to skip around a bit because there's a lot of insignificant things that happen that don't matter too much for this story. But one day I had a friend I had made on flight, and he started hanging out with my wife and I a lot. One afternoon, we were all out in town together when I told them I needed to go to 2 or 3 more stores. They didn't really want to go, so they said they were going to go back to our house to hang out. Well, I ended up finding everything I needed at one store, so I went back to the house early. When I got there, I found the front door locked. I unlocked the door and went in and found no one in the living room except my dog. So I walked up to my dog and started to pet him, and that's when my wife came running down the hallway from our bedroom, and she made a playful growling sound at my dog, and then looked up at me and said, "Oh, hey, I was just in the bedroom." And then my friend came walking out of my room down the hall, and he said, "Oh, hey, I was just in the bathroom looking at my eyebrows in the mirror." I looked at them both really weird, and I felt like I was in some weird sitcom all of a sudden. I just blew past it at the time, but it never left my mind. It was so effing weird the way they acted. Now, at this time, for more context, I was so unhappy in my marriage. I was honestly hoping to catch her cheating. I knew how badly I had messed up, and I really didn't want to have to admit that to anyone. I wanted her to give me a good reason for divorce. I know how selfish and wrong that sounds, but honestly, I was so embarrassed. The way she could only ever talk about her trauma. She never had anything positive to say. Any conversation anyone ever had with her was either cringy, awkward, or she would act overtly sexual in any situation, even around my more traditional family. She was extremely controlling of me in anything I wanted to do with my time. She didn't even know how to make a funny joke. She would make odd jokes or uncomfortable ones and would get mad at everyone when no one laughed. I wanted out so bad and didn't know how to do it. Skipping forward again, at this point, my head was completely out of my marriage. We were having a dinner party at my house with some of our mutual friends. She was not off work yet when most of them came over, but about an hour later, she got off work and was headed home. She called me on the way home because I guess she wasn't feeling good, and she told me that she thought she either had a brain tumor or a blockage. I'm not going to lie, my response was less than supportive because at this point I was mentally done with her and all of her ridiculous behavior. I told her that if she thought she had a brain tumor that she should just go to the hospital, and she got mad at me because I did not offer to drive her. The hospital was less than 5 minutes away, by the way. One of our mutual friends, now my current wife, could tell I was really over it and offered to drive her to the hospital. I continued to sit around and have a good time with our friends. Now, for some context, this hospital takes an incredibly long time to see walk-ins in the emergency room, so during this time, I had half of a beer within a 3-hour period. We were expecting her to be there upwards of 6 hours. She calls me after about 4 hours and tells me she is ready to be picked up, and trying to be a responsible person. I told her that I was uncomfortable driving because I had half of a beer and I did not realize she would come out of the hospital that soon. She absolutely blew up on me and told me I was irresponsible and unreliable. One of my other friends offered to go pick her up, and while they were gone, we decided it would be best to move the party to someone else's house because of how she was going to be when she got back from the hospital. Sadly, we did not relay this information to him fast enough, so he got home before we were able to leave. My ex exploded out of the car, ran up to me and got right in my face and started yelling at me. My friend's mom jumped to my defense. She was very drunk at the time, so it was quite funny, but she got in my ex-wife's face and told her to leave me alone. My ex-wife threw a fit and then ran into the backyard. At that point, we decided to pack up as quickly as we could and leave. Keep in mind that at this point, it had been about 2 hours since I had had a sip of my last beer. I felt fine. I hopped in the car with one of my friends so we could leave, and I hear a screaming noise. I look over and my ex-wife is running towards my car, and so I put the car in drive and started to take off as she ran up and punched my window. I made it about half a mile away, and I waited to make sure that the rest of my friends made it out of there. I saw no other cars coming from that direction, so I turned around and went back. When I got back, 2 of my friends were trying to reason with her in the front yard. She, in her manic state, tried to get in her car and drive off. They were trying to get her to get out of her car. She turned the wheel very hard and almost ran over my friend as she was trying to back out. So he used his police officer voice and yelled at her to get out of her car. At that point, I decided it was time to call my squadron and have them send over her squadron's first shirt, basically like a counselor/mediator. I also called my friend that I suspected her cheating on me with and asked him to come over because they seemed to have a very close connection. I wanted her to have someone she could calmly talk to. She was removed from the house for 3 days so that we could both have space. When she got back home after 3 days, she sat down next to me on my porch and said to me, "It's not going to happen until you say it." To which I replied, "I want a divorce. I think I've given enough detail on my ex-wife and the situation at hand, so I'm just going to get into the other details." Fast forward to when I started confiding in my now wife. At the time, she was married, but she was also going through a rocky situation. I'm not really going to go into that because that is not what the story is about, and those details don't really matter too much. My current wife is a very smart person. I told her basically this entire story in a lot more detail. She started to point out to me the holes in the story and the red flags that just did not make any sense. I already had my doubts and suspicions, but hearing it from somebody else started to put it in perspective. To add one more sad detail, one of my friends went on a short deployment that was only 2 weeks long. When he got back, he told me that he ran into somebody from my old base, and they had a message for me. The message was that the person who had assaulted my wife had committed suicide. He had aged himself in his bathroom, and before doing so, transferred everything into his wife's name, including all of his money. I called my ex to inform her, and her response was a very sarcastic, "Okay, you couldn't have just told me this over text?" I just hung up the phone, and later that night, she texted me saying, "Do you think he did that to himself because of what he did to me?" I never replied to her because her responses seemed insane to me and like she was trying to seem empathetic even though she wasn't. Those responses made me start to doubt the incident even for a little more context. After we moved to the new base, she and I had flown back and forth to the old base multiple times for court proceedings. I was not allowed to sit in the courtroom during all of this because they considered me to be a witness. I wish I had gotten to sit in the courtroom and heard his side of the story because things just don't add up. The evidence ended up being inconclusive, and the charges were dropped. Between my now wife and I, we both believe what happened is that Friday night when someone was peeping through the window, we think that my ex-wife knew that someone from my squadron saw what happened, or at least part of it, and she wanted to make an excuse for it before I found out that she had cheated on me with the neighbor. So instead of just owning up to it, she decided it would be better to tell me that the neighbor had assaulted her, and I believed that she hoped I wouldn't say anything and that it would just get swept under the rug. But when I reacted to it, she had to make a full-blown case out of it and go for the full story. She ended up ruining that poor man's life, his marriage, destroying his kid's life, everything. When all of this was happening, when I was still at my first base, all of my friends that I had been working with stopped talking to me. I had no idea what I had done then, and it's taken me a long time to come to this conclusion, but I think I finally know why. I believe that they think I was possibly in on it. With this much hindsight, I wouldn't blame any of them for believing that or feeling that way. I don't know how I did not see all of those red flags through every story and through all of her actions and everything that happened. I think that they believe I went along with it so that we could get out of that small base and out of that state and go somewhere better, but the complete truth for me is that I had no idea. I don't know why I couldn't see it at the time. I was just trying to be a supportive spouse, and I truly believed that something bad had happened to her. After so much time of realizing the kind of person she is and how horrible she is, I no longer believe her side of the story. It's just got too many holes in it. She acted so friendly with our neighbor too. I believe she heavily flirted with him whenever I wasn't home. For the record, I finally did get confirmation after the divorce that she cheated on me. She ended up dating the guy she cheated on me with. He and I are still great friends to this day. I honestly don't care that happened between them. It got her to stop obsessing over me as much. But when she and him finally broke up, we asked him if that day when she and him came walking out of our bedroom, if they had been doing anything, and he admitted to it. That kind of put the nail in the coffin to every other suspicion I had ever had about her cheating on me. I honestly believe she had cheated on me multiple times with all of the guys I suspected and probably more. She is a narcissist and a very terrible person. Not to say that I'm a victim in all of this. I should have reasoned more with this and seen the flag sooner. I feel a lot of guilt over what happened to that poor man and his family. That is why I'm writing this now, even after all this time. To any of my friends in the Air Force, if you read this post, I want you to know how sorry I am, and I really hope you believe me when I say that I had no idea at the time. I was not trying to get out of that base. The one who ended up deciding to move us across the United States was her. At the time, I was just trying to be supportive. I haven't name-dropped any bases or name-dropped any people in the story, but I'm sure the details will let you know who I am. And if my ex-wife happens to read this post, EFU, leave me alone, and please just let me have my peace. I didn't tell this story to dredge up anything from the past. I didn't tell this story to stir up any drama. I just still feel incredibly guilty and wanted to get it off my chest. If you have any questions about any more details, put it in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer them. If you read this post all the way through, thank you, it's incredibly long. I'm sorry. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My sister made me her maid of honor, but then humiliated me by making me sit at the kids' table. My sister, 34F, and her husband, 36M, just got married 3 months ago. I, 30F, was appointed maid of honor. I was so excited to help her plan her wedding, and I took on most of the work since I was unemployed at the time and she's a doctor. I won't get into details, but take note. She didn't have a wedding planner. It was all me. The time leading up to the wedding, I was miserable because of how the bride treated me. I felt like her own personal slave that she felt she could kick around because she's the bride. Just because you're a bride doesn't mean you get a free pass to be mean. Many times I wanted to just step out of the wedding party, but I kept telling myself to just bite my tongue and keep the peace because she's probably just stressed after doing so much for her. She refused to invite my fiancé, even if we've been together for 12 years, but invited my siblings' partners who have been around for only 2 to 3 years. My sister and her guy dated for a year before they got engaged, so we don't really know him too well. She said she didn't want my fiancé around because people would be asking about my own wedding, since they've all been wanting us to get married for a while. I refused to do any more work for her wedding until she apologized to me and invited my fiancé, which she did, not exactly sincerely, but whatever. I was hurt she wasn't even grateful for anything that I had done for her in her dream wedding, because it was expected of me to help. Cut to the day of the wedding and everything was fine. The ceremony was beautiful and the couple was happy. I was happy for my sister. By the time we got to the reception venue, I noticed that my fiancé and I were on a separate table from my family. They were at the VIP table and I was cast aside to sit at the furthest table, right beside the kitchen. I figured there was a mistake and I calmly asked the bride about it since she handled the seating plan. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "There's no mistake. That's where we belong. At the kids' table and far away." We were seated with 7 to 14-year-olds. The groom overheard us and agreed with me but kept quiet when my sister gave him this, "Don't you dare disagree with me" look. At the end of the night, the groom apologized to my parents for what happened to me and said he had no clue his bride did that. But he didn't say a word to me as his bride told him not to. Because of this, I decided to not make an issue and just tried to enjoy the remainder of the night with my partner. But I wouldn't make a mo speech. My parents noticed where I was and got upset at the situation as well. My siblings knew very well I wasn't at their table but didn't bother looking for me or wondering why I wasn't seated there. When they heard I wasn't making a speech, my 2 brothers walked to my table to tell me off, saying I had to understand my sister and the stress of being a bride. Be nice to her because it's her special day, and you're only a bride once. Yeah, right, I bet they'll divorce. That I'm a disgrace and a disgusting disappointment for not doing a speech for my sister. That I would make my sister sad. And I was being selfish, making the night about me when I was literally quiet in our corner. Needless to say, I wasn't having the best time, so we got up and left. We ended up in McDonald's for dinner, and I posted a story of us getting burgers saying post-wedding meal. I made sure I posted it after the reception ended to not make it look like I ditched, but my siblings saw this as an attack on my sister somehow. Up to this day, the bride says she did nothing wrong. Her reasoning for putting me there was, 1. I didn't plan her wedding exactly like she envisioned during the process, so I deserved to sit there when I was doing everything she told me she wanted. 2. She didn't like that I looked pretty in my gown. 3. I needed to be punished for insisting on bringing my fiancé. I didn't plan for my own wedding yet, as I wanted to be 100% focused on hers. Plus, she banned me from getting married before her since she's older. Again, because I didn't want the drama, I agreed. But now I just don't want anyone there except my parents and a few close friends. My parents agree with me, but my siblings are upset, calling me childish. But to be completely honest, I just don't feel like paying for people. Mine is a destination wedding, and my fiancé and I are paying for everything. These are our savings, and I don't feel like splurging on these people. They, along with my grandparents and cousins, are all saying I'm wrong. But hey, if I was excluded from being a sibling at my sister's wedding and no one cared, then why would you be upset if I excluded you in return? Comments where Op has replied. Comment 1. Op, wedding planning issues aside, one possible explanation for all this is that your sister really dislikes your fiancé at Op. In regards to my fiancé, there's nothing he did to her to warrant being treated so rudely. We started dating when we were quite young, and I, as well as my parents, love him very much. He was my best friend for a long time and still is my favorite person to this day. My sister always hated that I had a boyfriend before she did, because she believed I wouldn't ever get married because of my disability. I'm epileptic. Her husband was her first boyfriend, and she married him right away because she wants babies ASAP since she's already 34, and her goal was to be married before 30 to the point that she started planning and booking vendors even before he actually proposed to her. So basically, she's pretty insane. Her actions are always based on jealousy and the fact that I shouldn't be able to have things if she hasn't had them first because she's the eldest, i.e. boyfriend, engagement, wedding, kids, etc. That's why she said I couldn't get married before her, because it was already a slap in her face that I got engaged younger than her. Basically, she hates that I'm happy. She doesn't hate him. She hates me. Update 1. Hi again. So I'll answer a few questions and leave a quick update. I, 30F, come from a family of 5 kids. I failed to mention this because I didn't think it was all that relevant, but I actually have 2 sisters, 34 and 32, and 2 brothers, 26 and 22. A little more on my sisters. They're the best of friends. They're the picture-perfect model of sisterly love, while I'm the middle child with 2 younger brothers. So why did I agree to be Mo? Well, because I thought it would bring us closer. In my mind, I believed that this was her trying to be more of a sister to me. You always hear stories of that sisterly bond around weddings, and I tried to nurture that because that's what they had, and that sibling bond is what my brothers had with each other as well. Any chance I'd get to connect with my sisters, I'd jump at the opportunity. It's more me just feeling left out than being a doormat. I was a very sickly child, and that is why I was mostly with just my parents growing up while my siblings would be going out, meeting friends, etc., which is what my siblings envied. Apparently, they aren't close to my parents. Bride had both of us as Mo because she couldn't choose just one. I later found out that I was always the second option, and I was just appointed Mo so I'd do all the work while the other Mo got all the praise, which in hindsight I should have seen coming. While my brothers were busy harassing me about giving my Mo speech, Sister 2 was giving her own Mo speech about how she absolutely loves the bride and will do anything for her. All that crap. She then conveniently calls all the siblings to the stage to toast the bride and groom when I was crying and rushing out / walking away from my brothers. So did the other relatives in attendance. I was making a scene and making it about me. No, it's not the first time she hurt me. Fat-shamed me as a child, calling me a potato, saying things like I was a burden to the family because of my epilepsy, throwing all my makeup in the sink and wetting it because I moved her bath towel in the bathroom, calling me the stupid low IQ sister, even if I'm a licensed architect with a master's degree. When her guy friends wanted to ask for my number, taking my dream church for me, which is why fiancé said we could do a destination wedding at my dream country instead. It's just the worst she's done to spite me in front of my entire family. And no, we still haven't spoken since then, and she still maintains that I was the one who ruined everything by getting upset about the seating. Now for the update. 1. We will elope, just us 2 and a handful of close friends that were there for us since the beginning of our relationship. We'll have a small church wedding and a little celebration on the beach with the people we love. our chosen family, followed by island hopping with our entire party around the Philippines, all paid by us because I will spend on memories and experiences for people that love and appreciate us. The budget we set aside for a wedding in Italy will be put to an intimate 5-day wedding celebration on an island in the Philippines. 2. We will have our reception with the family when we get back home. The plan is to invite both our big families to a lunch on the weekend after. Collectively, this would mean about 80 guests max. Both our parents wanted to help pay for the engagement party and rehearsal dinner. They agreed to pay for this lunch and reception instead, meaning they could invite whomever they please. They handle the guest list, so if my siblings are invited, I couldn't care less because I'll be too busy with my husband of 1 to 2 weeks by then. Here, we can still have the father-daughter dance and a few other things like cake slicing, etc. We'll have piñatas, a brick oven pizza cart, coffee and pretzels, and an amazing Italian buffet with a pasta bar. Lots of fresh fruit and cheese because who doesn't like cheese? As for seating plan, ever watched Mamma Mia 1? Yep, think that. A long, winding table where my siblings can be as far away from me as possible, and as close to the service area as possible without it being obvious because they'll all be together at their own siblings' table. We'll be in the center with my fiancé, his 2 brothers, and our parents will be next to us while my wonderful sibs are by the end of the table by the restrooms, where they belong. I don't care at all if they're invited to this lunch because I really have nothing left for them, not even anger. I'm just so done with them that I'd feel more for a stranger on the street than I would for these people. It's indifference. They've hurt me so many times that I'm numb to their existence. 3. No bridezilla allowed. My sister expects to be Mo in return. Definitely not going to happen since my siblings won't be present in the ceremony. I do not need her around. I do not want her around. Yes, she will be invited out of courtesy to the reception, most likely, but I will make sure she's set aside like I was. How so? We recently found out she's pregnant, so I'm planning my wedding around her due date. Oh well, luckily she's due around June, which really was the month we wanted. So if she does decide to attend with a newborn and her hus, well then she's going to be at the kiddie table and told to step out when baby starts to cry. In the end, our wedding day is for us, and eloping is the only way I feel like we could just sit and enjoy our special day together away from all my siblings and family issues. Then we get back, have a get-together lunch with some good food and good fun, which is really all it is to me, a lunch. Luckily, fiancé's fam isn't as insane as mine is. So there you have it. Thank you all for your messages and comments and insights. I really was going a bit loco back then, thinking I was overreacting, but thank you so much for the clarity. Cheers to the end of this emotionally draining year, 2020. Comments where Op has replied, Comment 1. But you will invite them to the party? It's like saying, no matter what happened, come to my wedding. Sorry, but I think there is no way to avoid drama with these siblings. Op. Thank you for the concern, but they aren't coming to the wedding, just a lunch after the fact, as in, minimum 2 weeks after my wedding. They can do whatever drama they want during lunch because they'll be the ones who look bad, and I'll just laugh. I would have been married by then and done celebrating with my closest friends weeks prior. So by then, I'd just be enjoying some pizza and wine with a hus. Comment 2. OP said they're jealous of the attention Op got for being sickly when she was a kid. Sometimes parents can become so preoccupied with a sick child that they wind up neglecting the other kids. If that's the case here, then the sibs would have good reason to be angry. But they're mad at the wrong person. Op didn't ask for any of this anyway. These people are adults and they need to get their shit together. They're old enough to realize none of this is Op's fault. Op. My parents were actually very supportive and did all they could to be as fair to all of us. So I really can't put fault on them. They're really amazing parents. I wasn't treated any different. I just didn't have many friends, being absent from school constantly. So I'd hang with my mom. She's honestly my best friend. It was okay growing up, but the jealousy really was evident when we were in our 20s for whatever reason. Parents are allowed to be closer to one child if the others treat them like trash. Update. The wedding. I absolutely enjoyed wedding planning with my husband. Yay. If you ever decide to get married, do a small wedding. You'll live longer, I swear. We told our friends and families that we were pushing back the wedding and wanted to do a destination bachelor/bachelorette trip first. They had no idea we were actually getting married on this trip. We got to Boracay 3 days before everyone for some time. When friends arrived, we did all the fun island activities. The night before our wedding, we asked everyone to be up at 7 o'clock for breakfast and to dress up in tropical beach outfits for cute pics. We told them to pack this beforehand. Once everyone was there, husband told them we were to be married at 4 p.m. and this was actually an elopement. The excitement from all our friends will forever be a core memory. It's the best feeling to actually have people genuinely happy for you. Us girls did each other's hair and makeup, cried and hugged a lot while the boys had a good time drinking and playing football. We had our phones and an old digital camera that we'd pass around, and that was it for our event photos. Surprises were our thing since we began dating, and it was just so sweet that we both thought to do the same for our wedding. I love flowers, but I didn't want to bother finding a supplier there. We did have someone help us with all the requirements, but that was it. I'd just get flowers for the luncheon instead. Well, my husband decided to speak to the hotel to surprise me. He knew my favorite flowers and made the prettiest bouquet ever. He also had the church filled, and I ruined my makeup ugly crying when I walked in. For my husband, he is extremely close with his brothers, so I made sure to fly them out to surprise him too. He needed his best men there, and I was happy to have them. We said our vows and headed to the hotel for dinner by the beach for a boodle fight. Google that. Now, it's so good. Nothing fancy, but we were happy. The lunch. Before the elopement, I sent my seating plan to our family GC because I didn't want them to make a scene on the day. Everyone thought these were the seating plans for our reception. Well, here's where my pettiness shows. My head table consisted of us, our parents, and my husband's brothers. All my siblings were at both ends of the long table. My favorite slap in the face, though, was a table for one, way in the back, tagged breastfeeding area, with sister's name on the chair. She was livid. I simply said I was looking out for her. I expected she'd want some privacy, no hard feelings, just thinking ahead. My siblings refused to come because they saw my elopement as an act of disrespect, especially since my brothers-in-law were there. They called our relatives to tell them to not come. Some were upset I could do that to family and they did not agree with our union. I'm happy to report that out of 127 guests, only 58 were coming, so I cut my budget by over half. Sounds like a win to me. The venue was my husband's small family farm, which was so beautiful that I didn't need to spend much on decor at all. Music was just a Spotify playlist we made. Photos, prenup, beach, and lunch were all by my friends. Cake was baked by me and Mom 2 nights before. Flowers I bought myself from the morning market and arranged with my girls. My dress was just one I had in my closet. Food. We asked people to bring over potluck meals instead of gifts if they wanted to. We still had our pizza oven, pretzel cart, and coffee bar that we paid for instead of a caterer. Invites were designed by us and sent via email. Since my siblings all didn't want to attend, only Bridezilla hubby got an invite with no option for a +1. Her C-section was scheduled a week before my wedding. Did she notice I planned for her to miss the luncheon? Yes, she did. It was magical. Us being so unaffected upset them even more. But I've come to realize that the louder you try to force people to side with your opinions and your narrative, then the more toxic, unhinged, narcissistic you are. No, I didn't need to go NC with them because they all decided to be NC with me. I didn't even need to try. Blessings left and right. For those blaming my parents. None of my siblings were neglected. If anything, they gave my sibs so much more time and freedom to compensate for all the attention I needed. Remember, these kids are grown-ass adults. My parents are seniors, they're tired. They told my siblings off for being gigantic gaping a-holes. But what else can they do, really? Put them on timeout? Since both our parents wanted to pitch in, they helped us with a down payment on a house instead. In return, we surprised them with a 1-week vacation each to Amulo. We saved so much from our wedding and luncheon that we just wanted to show how much we appreciate their support and love. Lastly, any extra food and flowers were either taken home by guests or donated. That just made everything more special. Weddings are about love. Our favorite people were around to celebrate us, And we made sure to also celebrate the love we have for them. Our family, best friends, dogs, who were the stars of the show. Really, I fully embrace this life of peace, contentment, and indifference for my siblings. No idea what they're up to, sorry. They kicked me out of the GC, and I only know my sister gave birth because bro-in-law messaged she did. Last thing I heard is they were still trying to badmouth my husband, but we really couldn't care less. We've moved on. Sucks for them they haven't. Thank you all for following along. It was empowering to know I wasn't alone and enlightening to hear that this type of sibling abuse isn't actually normal. This is your kitty table maid of honor finally signing off. Some comments where Op has replied, Comment 1. I do have a follow-up question. The original post talked about a destination wedding in Italy to which they were not invited. What makes it plausible to them they would be at the reception? Op. They were invited to Italy. It's a given that family is invited to weddings unless they're like mine. And they knew of our initial plans. Of course, nothing was set in stone because, like I said, I didn't plan anything for my wedding because I prioritized hers. After my sister's wedding, I decided to find ways and means to uninvite them / make sure they don't attend, while they still believe they were sure invites because family, which was the entire point of my posts. If it'd be the if I didn't invite them. And as stated, of course it was plausible to them they'd be at reception because they believed they weren't wrong and were still wanted at the wedding. Please read carefully. Smiley face. Op responds on how her parents treated her siblings when she was sick. Op. Thank you for your opinion on the matter, but I sincerely believe it's not my parents' fault at all. I can't explain to you how my childhood turned out exactly, and I can't explain to you just how good my parents were. So if I can't convince you, then all right, but I'm going to always defend my parents on this. Smiley face. If you say they had trauma, well, I had far worse trauma growing up with epilepsy, and I never treated them poorly. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Wife of 10 days cheated on me with her friend and tried to hide it, so I kicked her out and now she's begging me to take her back. My wife, 26 female, and I, 28 male, were married for 10 days, in a relationship for 4 years. It was at this point that she started acting guilty and closed off. We had just returned home from our honeymoon and she'd been back to work as a bartender for 3 nights. When she came home from work that night, she was later than normal and I could tell something was off. She got into the shower first even though it was 3 a.m. She wore more clothes to bed than usual and laid curled up on the edge instead of cuddling close like she usually did. My wife and I became each other's best friend. Since COVID, we'd grown as a couple and as individuals. We had to work through arguments, disagreements, bad moods, and hopelessness. We watched a lot of informational videos about psychology and relationships together. Sometimes it caused a hot discussion, but my wife actually started to acknowledge that she believed too often that she was right and refused to hear me out on sensitive topics. She always wanted us to be honest with each other, even if it was about us downloading a social media app. We had permission and the ability to check each other's phones. I had a video channel from when I was a teenager and I honestly forgot about it until 3 years into our relationship when she discovered this old channel. She freaked out on me. She accused me of lying by omission because I never told her about it. I told her she was overreacting because it was old and I forgot about it. She did not want to hear that she was overreacting. It's like that's all she heard. The day after we were married, a friend of mine reached out to me regarding a video my wife posted on one of these internet apps. I watched it without telling her, then confronted her about having an account without telling me. She immediately became defensive, saying she only posted videos of our dogs. I tried to tell her that wasn't the point, that she'd been the one to say we should tell each other if we join one of these platforms because they tend to be toxic and cause problems in relationships. Now was her opportunity to tell me I was the one overreacting. That's when I told her I saw the video and knew that it wasn't of the dogs. It was of her dancing. She was surprised I saw it and knew the truth, but she didn't let that motivate her to take accountability or admit she lied. Instead, she asked me why I had to turn this into a reason to fight and said she didn't want me to make a big deal out of this since she didn't make a big deal out of my video channel. I reminded her that that was from years ago and this video of her dancing was made the day after our wedding behind my back. She apologized to me, but it felt forced, like she was cornered into it. That brings us to 10 days after our wedding, when she came home late from work at the bar and showered before laying curled up on the edge of the bed. The bed started shaking a little. Felt like she was stifling her sobs. I sat straight up in bed and asked her if she was okay. She only nodded, trying to cover her face. I turned on the light and stared at her while she cried, expecting her to start talking. She finally admitted she cheated on me, but she didn't say it like that. She said a guy offered to give her a ride home when her car didn't start. She told me she accepted and that he forced himself on her. I freaked out. I started screaming and crying in disbelief. I told her we were going to the police and needed to find this guy. I asked her if she knew him and what he looked like. She hesitated before answering me. Then she said she didn't want to tell the police because he was a friend of hers. I found it hard to control my breathing and I started pacing. It was hard for me to clarify the situation with her because a voice in my head kept telling me that she wanted to sleep with this man. She was only sobbing at first because of the guilt she felt, but she couldn't tell me that because she didn't want to suffer the consequences of cheating. It didn't take long for me to start screaming at her to get out. She didn't want to report this friend of hers for forcing himself on her because she didn't want him to go to jail. I asked her repeatedly if she wanted to have sex with this guy, and she said no. When I asked her to give me her phone, she went silent before asking me why. I said I wanted to check her messages, and she became extremely defensive. She wasn't upset anymore. She was mad at me for refusing to trust her. I reminded her that we had a rule between us that we could always check the other person's phone because trust is continuously earned. I told her she seemed like she was lying and trying to avoid consequences. So by letting me check her phone, she'd prove her innocence. She refused, so I kicked her out. I started shoveling her stuff out onto the sidewalk. I grabbed trash bags and started throwing anything of hers outside despite her cries for me to stop and listen. She finally snapped out of anger, not remorse, and told me I was right. She did sleep with him and he was better than I ever was. That right there was the warped woman my wife had become. Her ego started to inflate until she couldn't resist the temptation to find another man. With all the dating apps and throwaway culture we live in, I wasn't really that surprised. I was just extremely disappointed that it happened to me. I love this girl and I know she loved me, but she let her ego control her decision-making and make her believe she shouldn't have to be held accountable or suffer through any repercussions. After the dust settled, I started my own channel talking about this crisis and how women today are being told they don't have to compromise, respect, or honor their man. As a matter of fact, many women today foolishly believe they don't need a man or any man at all in life. I became pretty popular, which only made my ex jealous and remorseful. Months after I kicked her out of the apartment, she started begging my forgiveness. She wants to get back with me badly and tells me every day that I was and am the man she's meant to be with. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Brother and his wife constantly mock my wife for being less educated and insult our newborn. As a result, I snapped back once and now my parents demand I apologize first or skip the wedding. So, my brother 32M has always been rude to me 34M. When I first met my wife 33 5 years ago, he started to be rude to her as well and made fun of her because she's not as educated as him. His fiancée came into the scene around a year ago, and she was no different and made fun of my wife for not as educated as them. It was a big issue, lot of fights in my family because of the things they said about my wife, and my parents told us to forgive them. Fine, we did. Last week, my brother was again making fun of me while we were at a friend's place. I let it slide and just laughed it off because I'm just used to it at this point. After a while, I had enough and made a comment about his appearance. He immediately became angry and started making fun of our newborn, 2 months old, in front of everyone, including his fiancée. I lost it. I swore at him and yelled at him. One of our friends told him to apologize, and of course he didn't. His fiancée didn't tell him to apologize or stop. I told our parents that I have no interest in talking to him or his fiancée, and that my wife, our baby, and I are not attending the wedding. Now my parents are telling us to attend. What will people think if we aren't there? Etc. He still hasn't said sorry and instead is saying I'm at fault because I made fun of him. So, would I be the a-hole if we didn't attend the wedding? OP received the majority of NTA comments. Comment. Who gives a rat's ass what people will think if you don't attend? If anyone asks, tell them you were tired of his and his fiancée's abuse of your family. We'll say anything, NTA. But when do you finally grow a spine and stop apologizing or letting things go because your parents tell you to? You should honestly go and see with your brother and at the very least LC with your parents. You obviously aren't the favorite. Your wife should have never had to endure the BS you've allowed yourself to put up with. Don't make your child another victim. Update. May 23, 2024. For those of you saying this is a made-up story, it is not made up. This really happened, and I wish I were making it up. We went over to my parents' house last night. My brother was there as well. My parents start telling me to just move on and forget about it, that my brother has told them that he is sorry for what he said and that he says he made a mistake. I told them how can I just forget about it, and if he was as remorseful as you guys are saying, then he could have apologized to my family and me, but he has not, and it has been over a week at this point. My brother says he made fun of my baby because I made fun of him. I tell him, I responded back to you, and even if I made fun of you first, your automatic response is to make fun of the baby and not me? You think you're justified in making fun of my baby for no reason. He literally says yes, he is justified. My parents didn't tell him to stop. I ask him, so if I made fun of your baby when you have one, would that be right? Would I be justified? He doesn't answer. I ask him about this 3 more times. He does not respond. That let me know that no, if the rules were reversed, I wouldn't be justified. Then my brother says that he will apologize to me if I apologize to him first. My parents tell me to apologize to him. I told them, why would I ever apologize for making fun of him with a comment about him when he was making fun of me for hours until I snapped and responded back? And his automatic response was not to make fun of me back, but to insult my newborn? I asked them to explain why they think I need to apologize to him first when I don't think I'm in the wrong here. They don't explain and instead start calling me a bad bastard, useless, etc. My mom is like, families always fight, and they make up. I say, yes, families fight, siblings have arguments amongst themselves, but they don't stoop so low and start making fun of babies or children for no reason at all. At this point, I'm pissed. I tell them, what kind of grandparents are you that you are faulting me for sticking up for my baby and not tolerating him making fun of my baby? I tell them if you think I'm wrong for sticking up for my baby, then why don't you guys call Dad's brother and apologize to him? Side note, a few years ago, we found out Dad's brother was spreading false rumors about my brother, and my parents haven't talked to him since. I tell them, Dad's brother has emailed you, said sorry that he was wrong. So why don't you guys call him, apologize and make up? Dad starts calling me an bastard, all kinds of names. I respond back that I am just following your line of thought. At this point, I knew this wasn't going to be resolved, so my wife and I left. My brother hasn't apologized, and I will never apologize, and that's where we stand now. I still can't believe that I am being labeled at fault for this mess. How can I be at fault for tolerating him making fun of my baby? How can I be at fault for not wanting to apologize to him? I don't think I owe him an apology. If he can dish it, then he should be able to take it. He shouldn't have responded with making fun of my baby, and that too in front of multiple people. I never thought that my family would think it's okay to make fun of a newborn. Edit wow, just wow. Dad called. I answered. He asks if I'm going to be at the wedding. Told him no. Why would I go after everything? He says, so you want everyone to know about this? I didn't respond. He then says to me, I hope you end up on the streets. I say, how can you say that? And he responds with, yeah, I hope you end up in the streets. And I respond, wow, you are really wishing your children end up in the streets? He says, yes, because you are a bastard. I hung up. This is just too much for me. I have no interest in talking to any of them. Comments. OP on his brother calling his wife and child names. Him and his fiancée have made fun of my wife in the past for being darker in color than them. He called my baby a derogatory term for a person of color. Not dealing today. Comment 1. The worst part is your brother isn't the biggest issue in the situation. Your parents are enabling him to be an a-hole, and when they hear the true story, ask you to apologize first. You stood your ground and didn't give them what they wanted. This will go one of two ways. They'll respect you more and won't treat you as a pushover, or they won't talk to you. Either way, I think you come out ahead. You don't want that type of toxicity around your newborn. Side note. Nice work, Dad, sticking up for your child like that while staying calm. If anyone in my family made fun of one of my children, even at their ages now, I'd throw hands. Now on to the next story. Story 13. Twin sister can't have kids, so she begged me to be her surrogate, but I said no. Then found out her husband blames her for their low chances of a baby, and his family called her a murderer. Excuse my errors in etiquette. I am not a frequent to Reddit. My friend suggested I use her throwaway account to make this post. So please be gentle with me as much as strangers on the internet can be. I, Celeste, 30F, have an identical twin sister. We'll call her Stacy for the sake of the story. Our mother unfortunately passed in child labor, and we were raised by our father. Stacy has been married to Jeff for 8 years. I've been in a relationship with Mike for 3 years now. One thing I've always known about my sister is that she wanted to be a mom. Even when we were children, she was always thinking about wedding ideas, nursery themes, baby names, etc. I was always more focused on books and having fun. I am now a flight attendant. I am also attempting to become a published author. My sister has not worked ever, honestly. When we graduated high school, we went straight to college. She met her boyfriend in college, and once she graduated, became a stay-at-home girlfriend until she became his wife. I have known for a while that my sister has been attempting to become pregnant unsuccessfully. She has experienced a single miscarriage and has been unable to become pregnant again after thousands and thousands of dollars being spent on IVF and pretty much anything they could do because she wanted to experience pregnancy. After 5 years of no success, they have started to discuss other options. My sister isn't interested in adoption and is very adamant on having a child that has both of their DNA. Her words, not mine. About 3 weeks ago, she came to my house, and we were hanging out as we usually do, just chatting and watching Modern Family. She told me she had a serious question and needed to ask me while she still had her nerves. It scared me, but she asked if I could be her surrogate. I was frozen for a second and asked what she meant. She told me that I know what a surrogate was. She needed me to be her surrogate. I expressed that she knew that I wasn't interested in having children. This could definitely be due to how we came into the world. But I'll be honest and say I have never found the thought of having children appealing in any way. I told her that I would have zero issue with donating my eggs to her, however many she needed. She could have them all, but I could not carry her child. Upon hearing that, she became so angry, her face was so red, and she was just yelling about how it's obvious how jealous and hateful I am because this is a small task. I didn't want to bring it to her attention that she has always spoke about having more than 4 kids. Would the expectation be for me to do this every time? I don't know. I'm starting to feel so bad. She ended up telling me that if I couldn't do this one thing for her, how could I ever call myself her sister? She broke a picture of us I have sitting on my mantle and stormed out. Since then, she's only texted me pictures of her diaries from when we were kids and all of their vision boards, saying that I'm stopping her from creating a family for no reason and to think about the bigger picture. My boyfriend refuses to give me advice, saying that it's my sister, and he doesn't feel comfortable attempting to sway me in either direction because it's such a touchy subject. Honestly, this is the longest I've ever gone without communicating with my sister, and I am seriously on the verge of giving in. TLDR. AITA for not wanting to be a surrogate for my identical twin sister? Edit. I am reading all the comments, and I want to say thank you so much. I feel so much better knowing I'm not the villain, but I would be lying if I said I am not leaning towards just doing it. This disconnect with my sister brings me immense discomfort in ways I cannot verbally express. But I see 2 frequent questions I want to answer to hopefully get different answers. Money. My mother did not die of natural causes. It was provider error. My father sued the hospital, and my sister and I have sizable trusts with that money, so money is not an issue for either of us. And her husband is financially well off as well, so not working for 9 months or paying for the egg retrieval process, etc. isn't an issue in any way. It's more so her stubbornness for the baby to share our DNA and for one of us to be carrying it since we're identical. If she can't have a baby, how can I? Her lack of being able to have a child is due to a car accident we were in, which is also the source of the miscarriage she experienced. Due to her being in the front seat with our father, they took the brunt of the crash. Unfortunately, her body is now unable to carry a child, and she has had extremely complications with egg retrieval. I'm not sure about the details of how that has gone wrong, just that it is not working and not an option. It is hard to get her to discuss non-viable options so I can gain a better understanding. Doctors will not allow me to be a surrogate due to me not having a child. Thank you so much for this information. We have family dinner this upcoming Thursday because we always watch football with our dads and significant others. I'm sure this topic will come up if she decides to attend. I'm hoping I can bring this up to her. Update. 2 days later. So I promised an update tomorrow, but my dad actually ended up calling me while I was hanging out and told me to come over for dinner yesterday night so we could talk. I want to start by saying thank you so much for all the comments and advice. Some of you were jerks to not only me but my sister and boyfriend as well. I still appreciate the help. I didn't even ask about what when my dad called. I figured he had spoken to Stacy. Based on comments, I know you guys won't be happy, but I spoke with my boyfriend about where his head was if I were to go forward with it. He told me that he loved me and would support me through any and everything, but he would not continue to sit by while my sister made me feel like trash, and if I was doing this under coercion, he would not be able to support me, which I honestly completely understand. When we went over to my dad's for dinner, my sister and Bill were already there. I spoke to them both when we walked in, but only my sister replied. Bill gave me the most disgusting look and greeted my boyfriend only. My dad sat us down at the table, and there was just this awkward silence and tension I could cut with a butcher knife. He said, "Somebody talk. We need to get this resolved before the game tomorrow night. My dad loves football." LOL. I started off the conversation by telling her that I did some research, and on top of my initial concerns, I now had a few more and needed to know exactly what she needed from me. I first asked her what being a surrogate would look like. She just said, "Are you agreeing to it?" When I told her no, I just needed more detail, she broke down crying. I asked her if she knew that a doctor would deny me from being a surrogate given that I've never successfully carried a child to term, and she said she knew that, and she would just send my Bill and I to a center of excellence. We can pretend we're a couple, and once I'm successfully inseminated, then I would request a transfer from that provider to her OB/GYN for the continuation of care. My father intervened and said that asking me to do something a doctor wouldn't sign off on was a terrible way to attempt to begin motherhood. You could tell he wasn't on board with any of it but didn't want to pick a side. He asked her why she was so uncomfortable with the idea of a surrogate, and that's when Bill interjected and said, "Don't try to berate my wife with these stupid questions. Talk to your selfish daughter about why she can't help her sister." That immediately shifted the mood. My boyfriend started to yell at him for calling me a slut. My dad told him he could not disrespect his daughters in his home. Everything just went up in flames. My sister was crying, asking me to do her this favor, practically begging. I told her that if I could trade places with her, I would, but I was scared and just didn't want to die. I think that was the first time I had said that out loud ever. We couldn't get more resolved after that. My dad asked Bill to leave because he couldn't control himself and refused to apologize. When he was walking out, my sister told him she would meet him in the car and asked me to come and talk to her on the porch, just the two of us. I went out with her, and she apologized for her husband calling me a slut, said that they were just on edge and it's been stressful. I told her that she shouldn't apologize for him and that we'd figure something out. She asked me to reconsider and just kept saying, "You don't get it, you don't understand." When I pressured her for more, she admitted that her in-laws made a cruel joke at one of their dinners recently about how she was a murderer, referring to the child she lost. She said she asked him why he didn't stand up for her when they made the joke, and he said because it was true. He made some weird comments about her not being able to make up for it and how he was so excited to see what their child would look like and how he would never be able to look into a child and see pieces of them both. So she had the idea of me carrying the child and he was super on board, but the way she said it was like he planted a seed, and she seems to believe it was her idea. She said she hadn't seen him that excited since the baby, and she just needed my help to get everything back to normal. I tried to explain to her that nothing would ever be normal again and that what she was trying to do was the wrong thing. but he just started blaring the horn, rushing her to the car, and she said she'd call me later. I feel like I may lose my sister, but I now am not even willing to donate my eggs for her to have a baby with him. I took your guys' advice and looked up the egg donation process, and wow, not at all what I expected. I want her to divorce him. I am never going to help her procreate with that man. I genuinely think I'd be a surrogate for her to be a single mom before I'd ever allow her to place his child in me or take my eggs to even create a child with him. I had no clue that his family was pushing so much guilt onto her. I have literally been jumping at my phone every time it rings because I know she'll be calling soon, and I'll have to tell her that I'm terrified I'll lose my sister, but I can't and won't do this. Probably won't update anymore, but thanks for all the help. I'll probably create my own Reddit now because I'm kind of obsessed with the site. LOL. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.